Thanks for tuning in once again to the Ourlads Football Network. I'm your host, Greg DePalma, and we have another good show for you today because we're going to go college football and the NFL. As far as our interviews, we're going to be interviewing, first of all, Dave Syvertsen right here from Ourlads, one of our lead scouts who also works, who actually has just begun working for Giants Insider. And when I saw that, I was like, problem solved. Let's get Dave on. Let's talk about the Giants. We haven't talked Giants football since before the draft. So we're going to have a lot to talk about with Dave. Perfect. Couldn't get a better person to come on and wrap up what the Giants did in the draft, how the rookies have performed so far, mini camps, and now just in the beginning of training camp. Of course, John Harbaugh takes over. So a lot going on with the Giants. We'll talk to Dave about that in a few minutes. And then at about 8:45 Eastern, okay, so if you're here to check out Kansas football, that's when we're going to talk about Kansas. 8:45, Henry Greenstein is going to join us from KUSports.com. He is their lead publisher. And I think that puts us, where does that put us now with the Big 12? That means we have, wow, this is crazy, but get this. We have only one more team to go in the Big 12. That's it. And that's Cincinnati. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to find out the Jalon Daniels era is over in Lawrence. And we'll see how Cincinnati, off of back-to-back 5-win seasons, we'll see how they look to rebound in 2026. All right. By the way, we are now down to 5 in the SEC, 3 in the ACC, and 6 in the Big Ten. And it looks like we just found someone for Texas. Is that awesome or what? You know, we've been talking about trying to book an LSU and a Texas interview for the past month, even though we've actually been looking for 4 months. But now that we're getting really close to the start of the season, we're sweating. So we've talked about LSU and Texas in the SEC. We've talked about USC, Indiana, Washington in the Big Ten. And it looks like we might have our Texas guy. That's awesome. And then speaking of the NFL, it looks like, matter of fact, it's not even, it's more than it looks like. We've actually booked our final NFL post-draft interview. We've set it for weeks. We've only had one more team to go, now the LA Rams, and we have finally booked someone on the LA Rams. So that's it. That's 32 NFL teams, 32 NFL interviews. It all Dave Syvertsen of the Giants tonight. And then we're going to talk LA Rams football, which is actually going to be next Friday. Blaine Grisack, the lead publisher for the Rams on SI, is going to join us a week from Friday. Other NFL interviews coming up. We're going to talk Tampa Bay Buccaneers football tomorrow. Actually, we've got 2 interviews lined up again tomorrow. We're going to do Stanford in the ACC, followed by the NFL and Tampa Bay. A lot going on with Baker Mayfield, of course. So James Yarcho is going to join us. Then next week, Kyler Murray, the big news today, he is now the starter. We all knew that was going to happen eventually. So it's official. Still, we're going to talk to Adam Patrick of the Minnesota Vikings coming up next Wednesday. Also next Wednesday, after our Minnesota talk, the Dallas Cowboys and RJ Ochoa will join us. There's a lot of excitement with the Dallas Cowboys this offseason. A lot of people think that the Cowboys are going to be a dangerous NFC East competitor, and maybe even more than that. So we'll talk to RJ Ochoa coming up next Wednesday. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to talk with John Sheeran, who's going to come on and update us on the latest with the Cincinnati Bengals from BengalsA-to-Z-Sports.com. So that is, and of course, these NFL interviews, the ones that get by the Giants and the Rams, these are all about, hey, we've already talked to these guys after the draft. Now it's, you know, we're not going to get all 32 to preview the season. But as I've said, we're probably going to get about a good 10 to 12. And then we're going to have them on, obviously, during the season. They're going to be much shorter, condensed interviews week-to-week basis. So again, that's a great reason to subscribe here to the Ourlads Football Network, Ourlads Football YouTube channel. Don't forget also to share and hit that like button. All that stuff really, really helps for us to grow and to continue to give you the best in daily content here on the Ourlads, not only here on the Ourlads Football Network and the Ourlads Football channel, but also over at ourlads.com. Okay, so speaking of the NFL and the NFC East, I got a blur. I hate the blurs, especially if I'm going to be doing a long interview. There we go. Okay. I got to watch myself. Let's talk New York Giants football. And we're going to do that by bringing in one of our own who's also working with Giants Insider. So let's welcome to the show, Dave Syvertsen.
What up,
Dave?
Greg? How are you, man?
Doing good. So we are going to talk about the draft because I have not spoken to, usually Ryan Dunleavy from the New York Post is on with me. He's been on with me for several years. But I figured, you know what? I checked you out in one of your recent interviews over at Giants Insider. It's a new gig for you, by the way. Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Tell me a little bit about that. How did you hook up there?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I actually initially hooked up with them via Dan Shanka and Ourlads back in 2018, I believe it was, as just doing some draft content for them. There was a relationship between Ourlads and Giant Insider that went further back than me, and they kind of opened that door. He knew that I lived in Giants country. I did follow and root for that team growing up. So I just knew the team and know the team to this day like the back of my hand. And I just wrote draft articles for them. Started off as once a year, then twice a year. Now it's 3 to 4 times per year. But I also was a guest on them pre-draft time. Man, I want to say 5 to 6 years in a row. And it turned into 2 or 3 shows per year that I would hop on with them, and always had good chemistry with both Jerry and Chris, both good guys, both know the Giants really well, know ball really well. And an opportunity came up this past summer, and I said, like, hey, I got to run with this and really kind of put my best foot forward in terms of covering this team. It's a lot of work that I already do for a couple of different people. So it's just kind of more refining it. And we're going to have a post-game show every week. I'll be at every home game. I'll be at practice twice a week. And we'll also be doing a Wednesday night live YouTube show every week as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Get to cover the team. That's great. And that's your team growing up.
Yep. That was my team growing up. And it's still to this day, it's a team that I do root for. I'll watch the games. It's not always in the same light that I used to growing up. But hey, if there's a team that I want to see do well, and if there's a head coach that I want to see do well, it's definitely John Harbaugh and the New York Giants.
Good timing, right? Because it could have been any number of years in the last, several, which would, we got some hope. But reality, John Harbaugh steps into a situation which is great for Giant fans. So
yeah,
you couldn't have picked a better time, as you know, to start covering the team on a full-time basis. So matter of fact, there's a lot of excitement in general in New York. A lot going on with both teams. So maybe because New York is so desperate for winning football, and the NFL really is, I'm sure they are hoping big time that both the New York Giants and the New York Jets can start getting back into playoff contention. That's only a big thing for the NFL if that can happen.
Did you know that the last 10 years, the two teams that have the most amount of losses in the NFL, the last decade, are the Giants and the Jets? I mean, it's amazing.
Does not surprise me.
Coming from the same city, one city, 2 different teams, 32 teams in the NFL. The Giants
and it's New York.
Yes, I know it's New York, and the Giants have a storied history, a long history, and the Jets had a lot of success in the 2000s in terms of just playoff football, making the AFC Championship a couple times, and it just at the same time it just fell apart for both of them. And it's being a New York guy myself, it's hard to escape how poor it's been in this area. And I think it's both franchises are due, but this area in general is due for just exciting football. Maybe the Knicks got them off to this New York City sports scene.
That would be great.
A hot start, a little bit of momentum to carry with.
Yes, because if they both have success at the same time, especially with how much they've failed, it can only boost the other team and give them confidence, a little bit of jealousy. and that's a good thing. So yeah, we'll see if both teams can keep some of that offseason momentum they have. But as we all know, it's about the regular season. And taking a look at the Giants right now, Vegas has them as a win total of 7.5. So it's pretty on the money there. So they don't even have to be a playoff team to cover that at 8 wins, or at least a team over 500. And I believe their we could just go there. Their Super Bowl odds are 70-1, but the Eastern odds are actually 6-1.
Okay.
Which is giving them a little bit of respect. And again, I was just talking about the Dallas Cowboys, and a lot of people are high on the Cowboys, and I understand exactly why that's the case. You know, they look like they're going to be better this year because of their defense. But yeah, taking a look at the odds here, they are still the 4th team though, but that's the better 4th place team odds at 6-1. So what do you think about 6-1 for the Giants to win the East? Does that sound right? Or do you think Vegas is giving them too much credit?
I think that sounds right, because to me, I think the Philadelphia Eagles are without a doubt still the cream of the crop in the division, but they have lost their momentum. I do think they have reached the climax of what this regime is going to bring them to. Can they stay up there? I mean, it's debatable. I do think right now they should be favored to win the division, but I don't think they're no longer an ascending football team, I should say. You know, they lose the offensive line coach. Lane Johnson is apparently in his final year. Jalen Hurts has had several warts exposed as a true passer. The A.J. Brown drama is now out of town, but now these young guys, they have to step up and prove that they can fill the void left by his departure to New England. Washington, still very much an unknown because of the health of Jaden Daniels. Dallas Cowboys, they were historically a bad defense. So yes, you could say they're going to improve over last year, but it's hard not to. They were one of the worst defenses ever. And a lot of this, it's just unknown in this division.
Sure.
And the Giants have the most positive momentum in the NFC East right now. That does not mean they're better than anyone. I think they have to earn it on the field, but there's no arguing. They are entering in the era that every team wants to be in. A rookie quarterback on a second-year quarterback on a rookie contract that opens up the door to spending elsewhere on that roster. And with a coach that they're no longer teaching a coach how to be a head coach. This guy knows the system. He knows how to do it. He knows how to implement culture and know how to instill run-heavy physical football in a city that loves run-heavy physical football, fix the defense with new coordinators. You know, right now, you don't want to be the off-season winners. You know, those guys are, you know, you don't want to be, that's what you're celebrating.
Yeah.
But you can't argue against the momentum that they have right now.
Yeah, and the schedule is interesting because on one hand, before the bye week, you know, there's some winnable games. Playing Tennessee, Arizona back-to-back at home. Again, we have no idea how Washington's going to be early in the season. That's on the road, and the Saints are at home.
Yep.
So those first 2 games, those 2 primetime games, it's like, you know, if they could steal one of those games and they get the Cowboys at home, even though they've always had problems with the Cowboys, but still, if they could just steal one of those, and they get the Rams coming back from Australia, so that could really dictate the rest, or at least the first part of the season heading into the bye, if they can go 1-1. But generally speaking, it's not a bad way to open the season.
Yeah, and especially consider the matchup. You have to assume the Giants are going to be able to score points against this Dallas defense. New scheme or not, Quinnen Williams signed to an extension or not, Caleb Downs, a rookie defensive back that everyone thinks is all-world or not, it's still a defense that has a lot to prove.
Yep.
And while the offense is not a juggernaut in New York, you do have a lot of pieces here in addition to an offensive line that is probably on paper going to give them the most stable and best offensive line play they've had maybe in 15 to 20 years. And I mean that because last year they did upgrade from a bottom 5 unit to a mid-tier offensive line. Everyone is back, but they also added the number 10 overall pick in Francis Mauigoa at right guard. They also have a lot more depth than they used to. And the fact that Andrew Thomas is in training camp right now, fully healthy, this was not the case last year. I mean, this is a completely different team, a completely different offensive line with Andrew Thomas fully healthy. So you put all these pieces together on the offensive side of the ball that you know is going to be run heavy this year against a defense that could not stop a nosebleed in 2025, and they just have a lot of hope on the wall, you have to think that they're going to be able to score points in that opening matchup. And you're going to have to play against, to hang with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, and that high-powered offense. But to me, that's the game that seems very winnable. At home, that stadium's going to be juiced up. I've been to a Giants-Cowboys games probably 10 times in my lifetime. And when the Giants are out of it, it's a Cowboys home game because there's a lot of Cowboy fans in the Northeast, and Giants fans will easily cover their season tickets by selling that one ticket to a Cowboys fan, or most of it. But that won't be the case. Nobody's selling their ticket for this game. No true Giants fans are.
No, that's a great point. That's perfect opportunity. That's what you want to see the Cowboys early on in your schedule, so you can hold on to that, not at least 90% home field advantage against Dallas. So let's start at quarterback, because again, Jackson Dart, are you surprised at all by how well he's played? Or again, it's just one rookie season. And then everybody's now talking about the fact that, one of the big lessons he's got to learn is to slide more. He can't get into this impact situation in the NFL like he did in college, or he's not going to survive.
Well, yesterday he, on a scramble, on live 11-on-11, he slid as he was approaching the defense, and the entire team, coaches included, defense included, started clapping their hands, because it's a real thing that they're going to try to change how he plays the game a little bit. They wanted him to stick with that playmaking ability, the off-schedule ability. That's a big part of what his scouting report was out of Ole Miss. That's a lot of what Matt Nagy has success with as a play caller coming over from Kansas City. But to play a successful quarterback in the NFL for a long time and be dependable, I mean, this guy had 5 concussion checks last year in 10 games. And some of it, if you remember back, Brian Daboll was not happy about. They kind of maybe forced that a little bit. But if he plays an aggressive style and he's going to take hits and lower his shoulder, it's only a matter of time before he's going to start missing games. And Eli Manning showed you the best ability is availability. You got to be on the field every Sunday if you want to be a true franchise quarterback. So they have changed the way he plays a little bit. They're putting him under center a lot more than he was obviously in college, but even in his first year out of Ole Miss. So I think that's going to be something that's going to, A, help the run game, but B, get him used to playing a traditional, quote, dare I say, traditional quarterback, and let his arm talent do the work. And I think he's used to, back to his days at USC and Ole Miss, feeling like he had to do everything. And on New York, you look at this depth chart, there's some talent on this team that he should be sharing the ball with, distributing the ball, and not feeling like he has to be Superman each week. And that's a mindset he's going to have to adopt over time. But it seems like that's been a huge emphasis for them so far in camp.
That's one of the things that I'm hearing a lot more about this offseason. The coordinators, especially some of the new ones that are coming on board in some of these places, Washington included, Philly, about getting the quarterbacks under center. Why is this happening now? Why are you hearing more about this now? Is this and again, the NFL, it's a catch-on league. It's the same thing going on with 12 and 13 personnel, which is the new wave. So this is also like a mini wave. Again, like I said, I'm hearing more and more about these. Hey, you know what? We got to keep these quarterbacks more healthy. It helps them a lot more when we put them under center. Are you surprised that you're hearing this, especially this particular offseason?
Well, I think it's related to something you said, and it's the abundance of 12 and 13 personnel. The Giants are an example. Everyone keeps asking me, who's going to be the Wan'Dale Robinson replacement in the slot? And I said it's going to be tight end Isaiah Likely, because I think they're going to play a ton of 12 personnel with Theo Johnson lining up with his hand in the dirt and Isaiah Likely being in the slot. And because of that, it just makes it a lot easier to run the ball, especially if defenses are playing nickel defense. I mean, we all know this story. It's a pretty easy thing to figure out, but it's just easier to run the ball when you're under center. Matt Nagy spoke to the press today, and he just said the best friend for a young quarterback is a running game that's dependable. And it's a lot easier to run the ball when you're under center. And to me, one thing that I've noticed in the evaluation process working with Ourlads for so long, that almost every quarterback is biased towards shotgun, but you have a lot of quarterback in college. Every quarterback coming out of college, a lot of them have footwork shortcomings that affect them as passers. And because they don't practice the traditional dropbacks. And this is something that Jackson Dart has mightily improved in just short time that the footwork looks a lot more precise. It looks faster. It looks more balanced. And I think it's going to make him a better passer. And it's also just going to open up the run game a little bit more instead of having every run play start from 4 or 5 yards away from the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I remember way back when it first started with the Cowboys that it was always about, okay, it's a passing down, we're going into shotgun.
Yeah.
And that's why they went into shotgun, because it was a passing down. It wasn't about, the way it is. And all of a sudden, the way it just exploded years ago into now 90% or 95% of everybody, especially down in college, is in shotgun. Okay. So Nagy, what do you feel about him as offensive coordinator?
That to me is actually the biggest question on this roster, on this team right now. When I look at it, I think the special teams are going to see a massive upgrade. I feel really good about what they have on defense, despite the trade of Dexter Lawrence. But Matt Nagy running this offense right now, I wouldn't even put it on his shoulders, but there is not a great track record with what he's done as a coach in recent years. The Kansas City offense has taken a step back since he's come back from Chicago. He has not been calling plays for quite some time. The last time he called plays in Chicago, it did not work out. It got ugly there pretty fast. And when they did have success, it was on the backs of the defense. They had the number one defense in the NFL early in Nagy's career. That's the question I have about this team overall. Is he the right guy to Jackson Dart? I mean, look at this coaching staff. Brian Callahan, head coach from Tennessee last year. Greg Roman, Mr. Run Game Coordinator. I mean, from Baltimore days, and Lamar Jackson from Los Angeles Chargers with Harbaugh's brother last year. There's a lot of offensive minds on this staff coming together, and you hope that you can take the best pieces from Callahan, from Roman, and from Nagy and say, like, hey, we've all had success with young quarterbacks. We've all been a part of that, but you want to make sure it's cohesive. Now, one reason I'm personally optimistic about it working out is that Harbaugh is the CEO. This guy had I think a top 10 offense in Baltimore with 12 different times with 7 different coordinators.
Wow.
So it's a guy that is just always in front of success. And again, it takes a special talent to be that engineer that's taking ideas and thoughts and processes from all different angles and morphing it into one. So am I confident in Matt Nagy by himself? I'm not. But because Harbaugh's in town and there's other elements to this offensive brainstorming, I am optimistic that the offense will take a step up. And I don't think Nagy's going to be someone that holds them back. I think that's what I would say confidence-wise.
Let's talk about the draft. Start in the off. We might as well start with the offense. You mentioned Maui Noah. Fields was a 3rd-round pick. Davis in round 6. What have you seen so far about those rookies? And how many out of those 3, who do you think is going to contribute?
Maui Noah is going to be a day 1 starter at right guard. That was established over 2 months ago. Malachi Fields is the interesting one to me because while Malik Neighbors is truly the only superstar on this wide receiver group, I would even say skill position group at this point, Darius Slayton, Calvin Austin, Darnell Mooney, these guys they've had success in the NFL. Not a lot, but Darnell Mooney has been a 1,000-yard receiver already. He was 7 yards shy of having a second season. He's been a big play threat. A few years ago, he was number 2 in the NFL in receptions of 22-plus yards behind Justin Jefferson. I mean, the guy has had established success. Darius Slayton might have the overpaid label on him right now, but the guy has been a productive number 3 or number 4 caliber guy for 6-7 years now. So Malachi Fields enters a room that it's kind of crowded, but the thing he has is a skill set none of these guys have. I mean, this guy has big time size, big time long speed, and the coaches have been nothing but nice things about how well he takes things in, how attentive to details he are, and plays that he's making in practice. They have not done a lot of downfield throwing in Giants practices so far. I think they're kind of making sure they can get the layups and free throws on a consistent basis. Malachi Fields is not that. He's the guy that needs to get over the top. He's going to win the jump ball situations. We saw it at Notre Dame. We saw it at the Senior Bowl. But he is going to get a shot to be a week-to-week weapon in this offense. Not a starter, but I'm thinking 15, 20 snaps per game and a guy that can truly get down the field and offer a skill set that very few of these guys have.
Okay. Davis, does he have a shot in the next couple of years to start?
Start. I mean, the tackles are locked in for at least 2 to 3 years. I mean, Illuminar just signed a 3-year deal. Andrew Thomas is not going anywhere. JC Davis, our profile on him did say he could be a guard, but he's got the size and he's excelling right now in practice as the backup left tackle, the number 2 guy, because Marcus Bowe, their second-year tackle out of Purdue, is backing up right tackle. I think if an injury occurred tomorrow, Marcus Bowe will probably be the first tackle off the bench. But JC Davis is a guy that has a lot of NFL traits. And he got drafted in the 6th round. I think he was more of a 4th or 5th round caliber guy. I think the Giants got really good value in him. He was my top value grab of the weekend. Starter this year, no. I think his ceiling next year would be to be the swing tackle, the number 1 backup for left and right side. And Marcus Bowe could maybe shift inside, which I think that's where I projected him coming out of Purdue. I think he's a better weapon for an inside guy, maybe even center.
Okay. What's your guesstimation on Scatterboo and Neighbors being available week 1, September?
I would say 95% for both. I would be at this point, because Neighbors was on the field day 1 running routes, at I would say 80 to 90%. He let us know at that time that was he had already been running and cutting for multiple weeks prior to camp. And it seems like they're pushing him practice by practice. He made an outstanding grab in practice today where he looked 100%, landed and cut on that knee. So, and we're still weeks away. I don't think we're going to see either in preseason football, but Scatterboo looks like he's 100% ready to go already. And I think Malik Neighbors is going to be there on the field week 1. I'd be very surprised if it's not.
Okay. Who is going to be that last receiver to make the team?
That's probably the hottest topic right now in terms of people that are trying to project the 53. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. has done nothing but impress, and he's gotten some looks with the ones because of injuries or days off for other guys. But the question is, can he offer anything on special teams? Because more often than not, if you're going to carry 6 receivers, that 6th guy or 5th guy or both need to contribute to special teams. That's not Odell Beckham. So right now, it looks like if you had to say it's going to be 6, you have Neighbors, you have Slayton, you have Austin, you have Fields, you have Moody. So that last role is going to come down to Juju Smith-Schuster, who's dealing with the knee right now, and Odell Beckham Jr. But Braxton Berrios has been getting the special teams looks as a returner. So if they carry 6, gun to my head right now, I think it's going to be Braxton Berrios because they need a returner. And Odell Beckham, Juju Smith-Schuster will be given the option to be on a practice squad.
Okay.
But it's I can't see them bringing 7 in because they're going to carry 3 tight ends and a fullback.
We've got about 10, 15 left. But before we go to the defense, is there a player on offense, under the radar player, second-year guy, free agent, CFA from the draft, anybody that has impressed you or that Giant fans need to be keeping an eye on?
Brian Hudson, it was this is a third-year free agent. They signed him off the street last year. John Michael Schmidt suffered the 2nd concussion in 10 months, so he's out right now. And Lucas Patrick, a center that they signed this offseason to be the veteran backup, is dealing with the knee right now. That the rumor is right now he's going to get PRP injections into his knee, and for a guy that big, I'm going to assume he won't be ready week 1. So Brian Hudson has been excelling in practice. He's been winning a lot of one-on-ones. He's got some experience with the guys next to him. He was here last year. And it's a guy that very few people are talking about because, again, I just talked about this offensive line being the key for this offense taking the step up in a run game that's going to be an offense that's going to be very run game dependent, but also helping Jackson Dart take that step up in confidence. And you got to be strong inside, especially with a rookie at right guard. You have to have a center that's reliable. And this is a guy that I think is going to be is not being discussed enough right now, but he's been excelling in practice. And if he is the starting center or even the backup center, that's something that I think should make Giants feel okay about, that they have actual real depth on the offensive line.
But Schmitz, you're talking maybe just missing 1 week.
Yeah. I mean, you never know with a 2nd concussion. And, that kind of stuff you got to be a little careful with. He did miss just 1 game last year with a concussion, I believe, if I remember that correctly. But again, this is a guy that's ago where you were drafted and what the previous coaches did with you. John Michael Schmitz is the starting center on this team. But if there is an injury concern with him or he's a little slow to get back, Brian Hudson will have the opportunity in these preseason games to prove that he might be able to be the guy.
Is Lucas ahead of him on the depth chart?
He has been. He's just been missing time with a knee. So I think they called it old guy's knees or old man knees, something like that in pressers. So again, this is a guy that's he's been a backup pretty much his entire career. I don't think you're going to make any long-term decisions around him.
Okay, on defense, let's go with the rookies. And so some top picks here with Reese. Hood went in round 2. Kelly had a nice little college career with BYU. And then a 6th rounder up front. So what have you seen? Have you been impressed with Reese so far? Or is he just looking the way you expected? What's your evaluation so far?
So remember, I had Sonny Styles ahead of Arvell Reese just because of, they're just as freaky as each other athletically. Sonny Styles was a little bit more refined to me, but they were 1A and 1B among a very talented linebacker group this past year. But Reese has been probably the most impressive rookie in camp so far.
Okay.
And he might even be the second or third most impressive defensive player they have on this team so far in camp. And it's not just the talent. It's not just the versatility. It's the violence in which he plays with and the playmaking he's doing in coverage. We knew that Arvell Reese would be a weapon against the pass, but you assumed it would be as a pass rusher. But he intercepted another Jackson Dart pass today. I think it was the second one of the preseason. And it was one of those freaky athletic plays that very few people can make. So, this is going to be a very every defensive coordinator talks like this, but this defense truly to me is going to be very multiple, very versatile. They're going to have a lot of different alignments. And I think Arvell Reese is going to be that queen chess piece that you literally can put everywhere, in the middle, on the outside, strong side, weak side. And it's someone that I think is already kind of being thrown into a lot of different roles, and he's responding very well. He's a very quiet kid. He's not loud. But the contact that he makes is loud. You can see a lot of people are saying the same thing about him. The sounds that come out of pads that knock into each other when Arvell Reese is involved, it's different. And it's because he can convert that speed and explosion into real power. So run defense, his inside run fits were my biggest question on him coming out of Ohio State. He's been passing that test left and right every single day. Now he's making plays in coverage. He beat Andrew Thomas as a pass rusher. I mean, you're just lining up all these different things that he could do for the defense. You got to be careful not to throw too many rolls at him at once. But to me, this is a guy that I think you're going to be building the defense around if he continues on this ascent.
Yeah, and if he takes off and with the pass rush that they have, there's a lot to be excited about, but it's that defensive front, especially with the loss of Lawrence.
Yeah.
So how does that look at this point? Is this the biggest question on the entire team?
Yeah, the defensive line was patched together post-trade, post-draft even, with just a lot of guys on these one-year deals that nobody really wanted in that first wave of free agency. DJ Reader was a solid get. Shelby Harris is a solid veteran. But when you compare this to a lot of different run defenses and what they have at front, and also look at what the Giants were doing against the run last year, nobody allowed more yards per rush than the Giants last year. So again, like the Cowboys, which we mentioned earlier, you're starting from the bottom here. So even if you're looking for an improvement, cool, but how much is it going to improve? And how much can that factor on Sundays? So you hope that a new scheme, new defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson, and just a new mindset. Carl Banks talks about this a lot, that stopping the defense is not always personnel. It's not always scheme. It's a mindset by the entire group. And you hope that this Harbaugh regime, this Harbaugh scheme, this Harbaugh culture can at least raise the floor that, hey, even on bad Sundays, we're not going to be the worst in the NFL. We can make this a mid-tier group. The pieces are there, but it's going to take guys like Arvell Reese and Tremaine Edmonds to really shine and let these guys up front kind of keep them free. So everyone's got to do their job at a high level. But I do think this is probably the most vulnerable component to this team overall, but especially the defense.
Is there a player or two for the Giant fans to latch on to get excited about? You mentioned Alexander.
Yep.
It's real important for him to take that next step. They used up a 6th round pick on a rookie, and there's a few other. Matter of fact, what is there? A total of about 6 free agents that are up front.
Yeah, I mean, they're making these guys compete for their jobs. I mean, Darius Alexander is the second-year guy out of Toledo. He's a 26-year-old already. He was an older rookie, and he was a guy that out of Toledo, he played all over the front. He was a nose, he was a 3, he was a 5, and in every successful Harbaugh defense, there was always a guy like that, like this, on his front. Now, Derek Alexander, he hit some speed bumps as a rookie. He flashed every now and then, but it was more bad than good for a first-year guy coming from a small program. But he's been one of the stars at camp so far. He's got 2 interceptions already. He's getting to the quarterback. He's enormous. He's a good athlete. All the studs are there for this guy to be a really important player for this defensive front. And just like I said, hey, it might be unfair to say this, but Francis Mauigoa might be the most important offensive lineman in terms of the whole group taking a step up. Unfair to say that for a rookie, but life's not fair. Darius Alexander, that's how I feel about him, because you already know what you're getting in DJ Reader and Shelby Harris. Darius Alexander is the one guy that has someone known to him that has a real upside, that if he does hit the ceiling of using all these tools, these rare blend of tools that he has, that really does reshape the entire defense front.
Jamison Travis, what was the reason for this pickup?
Just a run defender. Harbaugh loves those big, wide guys. You know, the problem is he's the 3rd string nose tackle right now, and those guys don't get a ton of looks in practice. It's been a lot of 1st and 2nd string snaps in practice. So to me, is just an unknown, but you do kind of know what you're getting. It's just a run defender only with good size. He flashed on tape at Auburn, but it's not someone that I really think is, I mean, I don't even know if he's going to make the 53. If I had to guess right now, I think he's going to be a practice squad guy.
Okay. Jack Kelly, again, nice career in college. Type of kid that you just feel is going to be around in the NFL with doing something.
Yeah, he stands out every other day in practice. I think one thing that has impressed a lot of people early on is how fast he is. I mean, he's running with guys. He's carrying tight ends, receivers, and backs up the seam step for step. He's running like a 4.4, 4.5 type guy at 240 pounds. And we already know what he could do as a pass rusher. That's where he made his money in college. He's probably not going to have that same success or even that same role. But he's a guy that's definitely going to be a special teamer early on. We know how Harbaugh feels about special teams. He'll have a role there. As a long-term future at linebacker, I don't think anything really he's not going to hop over Micah McFadden on the depth chart. So really, he's going to be the number 4 guy inside. He's probably going to push Darius Musow out of a job this year. But one of them will be on the practice squad. But I think Kelly brings a little bit more juice to special teams.
Abdul Carter, are you expecting a big jump this season?
I thought he played a lot better than many people give him credit for last year. He was right up there in quick pressures. Again, quick pressures are pressures under 2.5 seconds. He was right up there with Will Anderson and Myles Garrett last year. I mean, those are the 2 guys that were ahead of him. That's it in the entire NFL. So he got to the quarterback. He didn't finish, and I think there's a lot of fine points to his game that need to be fixed. The little details, the things that you don't fall asleep for in the team facility during practice for. If you remember that story from last year, that won't happen under Harbaugh. I can guarantee that. But the talent is there. I think he showed that he can beat guys one-on-one. He's going to get a lot of one-on-one opportunities with an all-pro on the opposite side of him and Brian Burns, and he can win a one-on-one inside, outside. He just has to get those last little details kind of, really narrowed down and figured out. But his goal is to be the defensive player of the year, and he has the talent to do it. Remember, everyone loved this kid coming out of Penn State. But that only means so much. In the NFL, you have to take everything to another level. And I think he's starting to learn that talent only means so much. Now you have to be obsessed with the little details. And you hope that off the field practice habit of his takes that next step, because I think that's the only thing in between him and being an all-pro.
Got the right coaching staff for that.
Yes, he does.
It's such a luxury, and it's so it just shows you how, especially when you have 2 elite edge rushers, which they're probably going to have.
Yep.
That's something that not many teams in the NFL can field, and that just makes a load of difference, especially for a secondary. That at corner, you could see some concerns, but they did draft Colton Hood, which seemed like a really good pickup in round 2. So what are the big question marks? What do the Giants have to do at corner to get better?
This secondary is turning into maybe the most interesting component to the team in camp so far. Paulson Adebo is not seeing first team snaps right now. They've been doing some rotations there. And you want to know the guy that's been stepping up and has been getting the praise from everyone. It's not Colton Hood, not Greg Newsome, who's
let's say Deontay Banks.
It's Deontay Banks.
Wow.
Every single time they talk about the cornerbacks, his name comes up. And
that would be huge.
There are little asterisks on it in that, hey, nothing's being given to him, but he's doing everything right. He's using this regime change as something that's kind of lighting a fire underneath him, because the talent has never been the question with him. It's, can he anticipate routes? Can he locate the football? Can he not get so grabby when the ball gets downfield? And it's a guy that just keeps popping in practice. And if you remember back to 2023, he did have a solid rookie season. And Wink Martindale was the defensive coordinator who also worked under Harbaugh. They have a very similar approach to what they want out of cornerbacks. A lot of man coverage. Shane Bowen, previous defensive coordinator, was the opposite. A lot of mental capacity, a lot of anticipation, a lot of instincts. Deontay Banks, that's just not him. So now they bring in Denard Wilson, who probably has more similarities to Wink Martindale than any defensive coordinator or defensive coach that Deontay Banks has worked with in New York. So I think there's a little bit of there's something brewing there. I'm not ready to put him in the starter yet, or even the number 2 or 3 role, but he's ascending right now. His arrow is pointing up. Paulson Adebo's arrow is pointing down. And Drew Phillips and Greg Newsome are both kind of battling their own injuries right now. Nothing serious. Okay. But Colton Hood now also has the door open for him. I mean, John Harbaugh has historically not started first round or even second round corners early in their career. They played every Sunday, but in terms of being an every game starter, that's usually year 2 under Harbaugh. That was something I picked up on his days in Baltimore. But he's been exactly what he's in college, just a very hot and cold, beat one play, makes a play the next play. So right now, just this room, if you told me any sort of combination of starters, Greg, is going to be week 1, I'd believe you, because it's very much up in the air.
How's our Darius Washington looking?
So he's a favorite of Baltimore, who they want to hold on to him, and Harbaugh. And he's playing a very versatile safety and nickel role because Andrew Phillips is out, and that's kind of what they did. But now Tyler Nubin is getting kind of half looks at number 1, first string and second string. And that's the guy that's taking his spot. So our Darius Washington is going to be a part of this defense. I think he's going to be a starter. I don't know if it's going to be at nickel or at safety. But Tyler Nubin, his job's in jeopardy as well because of this new guy. And this is what I mean, Greg. They're making everyone earn it. And I love training camps that have a lot of intra-roster competition, and the Giants have it.
Thibodeau, is there a chance he gets traded this season?
Not unless they are completely out of contention. And I think they want to lean into this identity that brought the Giants to a really high level, 2007, 2011, where you just kept on what Philadelphia has done in recent years. You have 7 or 8 pass rushers. You don't want 4, you want 7 or 8. And I mean that. And Kayvon Thibodeau they're saying this is the best camp he's ever had. Maybe he's motivated by money. Maybe he's grown up. Maybe he's fully healthy. But he's actually winning a lot of one-on-ones inside. So he might be their interior pass rusher, while Abdul Carter and Brian Burns are playing their game on the outside. So they're not going to trade him. They've really fully endorsed him. They've said he's been one of the leaders of the locker room post Dexter Lawrence. To trade him, unless they're completely out of it, it would not be a good look for this coaching staff.
And again, what a boon that would be if he were to actually have his best season. Who cares what it's for, right?
Yep.
As long as he can do it, that'd be tremendous.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it sounds like that this is typical NFL team on average that is a contender that you just don't have any idea how the season's going to unfold, but they've got the talent where they could go from surprising and winning the division to being out of it by the deadline. It just, anything can happen. But it sounds like it's definitely going to be a much better season, whether the wins or losses come, they're going to come a lot better than last year, but still the fact of the matter is, it sounds like it's going to be a good season. It's just a matter of how good can it be? What's your gut tell you?
I think they're going to be 8-9, 9-8. I think they're going to be in the playoff contention, around Christmas time. And it's been a long time since they could say that.
Yes.
And I think it's because the floor is going to be higher. They're not going to bottom out like they have in recent years. I just don't think Harbaugh will allow that. I think they've done everything they can to support a young quarterback in year 2 by adding playmakers and protection up front. That's the template that worked for Chicago. That's the template that worked for New England. Both guys that had quarterbacks in year 2 get a new coach, new culture, a lot of support around him. I think the Giants can move to that trajectory. There's just a lot of questions on the defensive side of the ball, especially, that a lot of things have to go right. But they signed an all-pro punter, Jordan Stout from Baltimore. They have a kicking competition right now. The kid from Michigan, Zvada, and Ben Sauls, who was, I think, 8 of 8 last year. So there's just a lot of things that you can tell it just feels and sounds different with Harbaugh in town, which raises the floor. I just don't know if the ceiling, you can really put it to Super Bowl contender yet, because the talent just hasn't been brought in yet. But they're on that trajectory, and just history tells me they're going to be around 500, barring health, to their key players like everyone else. And we'll be talking about meaningful football games around Christmas time.
So you'd go with over 7.5. You'd go 8.
I would. I think 8's my number right now. And, barring health, you want to see these guys get out of preseason healthy, especially Andrew Thomas and Malik Neighbors. You want to see them. Those are 2 guys I really don't think you can afford, in addition to Jackson Dart, to really get hurt or miss time. So I think 8 wins is very much within reach.
3rd or 4th
place? I would say 3rd place.
Okay. Washington 4th? Or are you going to surprise me with someone else?
I'm going to go Washington 4th, but I do think Washington, Dallas, and New York are all going to be between 8 and 9 wins. I think it's going to be a really competitive bottom of the division, and Philly ends up with around 10 or 11 wins.
Okay. Dave, I appreciate it. It's good to talk to you again.
You too, Greg.
Hopefully we can figure out a way during the season to get one of these in, especially, big games are coming up. And if it happens to be that they're hanging in there until December, then there should be a lot of games for us to choose. So
absolutely.
Appreciate it. And of course, you're going to be doing your weekly videos at Ourlads?
Yep. We're going to do the Ourlads all-rookie team, you're saying? We're going to do something a little different this year. We're not going to do a weekly team with write-ups. We're probably going to do a mid-season all-rookie team and then an end of season.
Oh, are you going to do a preseason?
I would like to. I have bosses that make that call at Ourlads. So I would like to do a preseason all-rookie team. I'm sure we could try to squeeze that out.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
All right, you got it. Dave Syvertsen. We have links in the description of this video where you can check out Giants Insider, where Dave is now a part of, and also follow Dave on social media. And of course, when we get closer to the 2027 draft, we'll be talking a lot more with Dave to get us ready for that big event here at Ourlads. All right, that's the NFL side. We'll talk more about the NFL a little bit later on, go over some of the big stories happening and a lot of injuries taking place. And we knew that would happen. It's unfortunate. I'm just glad so far my team hasn't had one, but I know it's coming. It's got to handle it when it does. But now it's time for us to talk a little college football. So let me see what we could do. Let me get this out of here because I want to switch this over to the college side. And we're going to talk some Big 12 football, as I said, from the very beginning. And that is specifically the Kansas Jayhawks. We only have, as I said, this is one of the final 2 teams that we are going to talk about in the Big 12 as far as interviews. So we have really been very fortunate to line up just about everybody who covers their respective teams in the Big 12. And now it's the opportunity for us to talk about the Kansas Jayhawks. Again, as I mentioned, no Jalon Daniels, 5 years. He's been around for a long time. It's time for him to now get another job. And Henry Greenstein is going to join us, publisher of KUSports.com, here for the very first time to break down Kansas Jayhawks football and to find out if Lance Leipold can put an end to the 5-win seasons the last 2 years. So let's go ahead and get a jump start on that. Henry, thank you very much for joining us. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg. I've clicked on many an Ourlads depth chart in my time, so it was fun to hear from you, and I'm glad you could fit me in to talk some KU football.
Well, see, now you're going to be responsible for Kansas's depth chart here. So no pressure. Yeah, they're very hard to do in college for us, especially this time of year. So anytime we can get assistance, we are all over it. And as I was saying, at least in the one spot for Kansas, the quarterback spot, that has not really been a turnstile the last 5 years. Been a couple of guys, but more specifically Jalen Daniels, and he's now gone. Before we get into the depth chart, though, it's interesting. Lance Leipold, I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and I remember the move from Buffalo and being really excited for Kansas football from what he was able to do at Division III, what he did at Buffalo. So, oh, this is great, because you just, as a college football fan, you don't like to see programs that year in and year out just don't win. And we all know Kansas, more than anybody, were one of those programs. And so it was like, oh, great. This is a great situation. This might work. And sure enough, a couple of years into the program, it did start to work. 3 years in, banner season. Everybody expected big things in 2024. And then that's when things just really started to slide. And then I heard some whispers about, should Lance Leipold be on the hot seat? And I really didn't buy into that myself, because I'm like, does anybody realize what this program was like before he took? Come on now. But I had to do my research, of course. And sure enough, yeah, there's no hot seat for Lance Leipold. So what is the situation as far as the fan base with Leipold? Are they 100% behind him, or a majority behind him, or are they a little impatient, even though they're really probably no right to be?
I think the fans are antsy. I think that Leipold's first couple years redefined what the expectations could be for KU football. And, there are a lot of young people in the fan base now who, even though he's only been here 6 years, maybe don't remember just how miserable it was between Mangino and Leipold for so many years. And I don't think he's on the hot seat in any practical perspective, both because he's had more success at KU than anyone else could in the last 20 years. And also because, frankly, like a lot of athletic departments, KU is not in a position to cut ties with a highly paid coach right now.
True.
So those two things, I think, are working in his favor. But yeah, I think there's some restlessness among the fans when you consider that both of the last 2 seasons, the teams were worse than they were expected to be. 2024 was the real disappointment.
Yeah.
They brought back almost all of the relevant players from the team that had the best season in KU's modern history, the one that won the Guaranteed Rate Bowl in 2023. That was my first year on the beat. They brought back so many players from that one, but there was a lot of uncertainty about Jalen Daniels' availability all through that offseason after he had the back injury. A lot of the receivers were injured too over the course of that spring and summer, and the rust showed, and they started out 1-5. And it was a complete calamity, because that was a team that people thought could contend for a Big 12 title. Then, in a bizarre turn of events, they won 3 games against ranked opponents in a row to get to the brink of a third straight bowl game, which has never happened at KU. And then they proceeded to get blown out by Baylor in the last game of the season. So that was 24. Last year was a bit different. Last year, in Daniels' final year, he started at least 3 games each of the last 6 seasons for KU. In Daniels' final year at the helm, he started out super strong. But then there was a game where the defense just completely melted down against Cincinnati. They fell to 4-2. And the rest of the year, they only won 1 game. They had a goal line stand at UCF for their 5th win. But other than that, just some truly inconceivable defeats late game when they thought they had things wrapped up. At Arizona, they make a bad decision to kick a short field goal. They missed the field goal out, game-winning touchdown drive. Against Utah, Daniels, in his final game, throws 2 late interceptions that ultimately doomed them in a potential upset win for bowl eligibility. So really disheartening way to end that last season. And that one was kind of a real test case, I think, because it was the first time they had assembled a team with transfers. And a lot of the transfers were pretty successful, but it wasn't really enough to get them beyond 24. So this year, same kind of thing. Revamped roster, few key returners, but And I think that it's probably fair to say KU will be better at almost every position than it was last season, but there's so much uncertainty at the most important position on the field that it could potentially overshadow that.
Yeah, taking a look at the schedule here, BYU, get them at home, Utah on the road, no Texas Tech. Those are the three top teams as far as Vegas is concerned. And then you've got games that you never know, which is really a lot of them, including Arizona State early, Kansas State, Baylor, and those teams, TCU. So what do you think about the schedule? Good schedule, fair schedule, average schedule?
Well, I think there are some ways that it panned out in a really unfortunate fashion for them. You know, when they agreed to go to London for that Arizona State game with that little asterisk next to it, they gave up a home game to do that. They did that because the east side of the stadium is still under construction. So they basically felt, all right, now is as good of a time as any to give up a home game because we're still in the process of getting this done. So we might as well, and we'll still have 6 games at home. The problem is when they did that, they had the Middle Tennessee game also scheduled for September 19th. So they were like, all right, we think we can move this Middle Tennessee game to week 0. Well, that didn't work out. So they had to move it to a random week in the middle of the season. So now they play those first 3 games. They get their 1 bye week, and then they play 9 consecutive games, including the entire rest of their Big 12 schedule. So I keep telling people, like, this team could be better, but the schedule is pretty brutal in terms of how it all shakes out and the lack of rest they're going to get. Especially when you consider, you know, coming off that Middle Tennessee game, going at Utah for the first time, and then at K-State when they haven't beaten K-State 17 times in a row, and then versus Baylor when they haven't beaten Baylor like 12 times in a row or something like that. It could get ugly early if they don't pick up some wins in games where they might not necessarily be favored.
Yeah, well, those 2 games there, I mean, Middle Tennessee, Long Island, you get those wins, but that's why it's important to at least split the Missouri-Arizona State games.
Exactly, and they haven't beaten Missouri since 2008. Obviously, they haven't played them much, but that was the last time they did it. And it's been a long time since they had the chance to host their most bitter rival in Lawrence, so that'll be a highly anticipated game. And then ASU, that could be a pretty evenly matched game, and that might be a swing game. And you know, with the international games, whatever happens, the rest of the season will be viewed as a consequence of whatever transpired overseas, like it was for K-State last year. So all that is to say, I agree with you. They got to find a way to beat one of those 2 teams and to put themselves in a position where they can survive the early part of the schedule to give themselves a chance at a bowl game in the latter half.
So they're 45-1. They're the 10th choice in the Big 12, which is about it's almost about average. They're not a long shot, but they're probably considered the 3rd tier. You've got those top 3. Then you have Kansas State, Houston, Arizona State, and even Oklahoma State with TCU. Then you got to jump to Kansas, Baylor, West Virginia, UCF. But look, the fact of the matter is, I've been saying this for months, and this is just a fact. In today's day and age of the portal, there's going to be 2 or 3 teams that are not supposed to do anything, according to Vegas, in all 4 power conferences, and those teams are going to surprise. It's just a matter of who are the surprise teams. That's the hard part, is trying to figure them out because there's a lot of options. And I went over the schedule, the roster, which we're going to go over in a minute here. But overall, before we kind of dive in, it does look to me that Kansas has talent. It really kind of, like any football team, it kind of starts at quarterback. And when you say goodbye to Jalen Daniels after all those years, and then you bring in this quarterback battle that they have going on now, there's a lot of uncertainty there.
Yeah, you say goodbye to Jalen Daniels, and it's not something like TCU bringing in Jaden Craig, or even like Cincinnati bringing, or UCF bringing in Alonzo Barnett, or Cincinnati even bringing in J.C. French. Like, it's 2 homegrown guys who haven't played. It's a very different kind of thing. They did add Chase Jenkins, but he was limited in the spring due to injury. He's coming from like I don't know. I didn't know much about Rice's scheme, but they were running basically a shotgun triple option there. And he's had a big adjustment. So he's not really a factor in the competition. So yeah, I totally understand anyone looking at Cole Ballard and Isaiah Marshall and being like, really? But KU believes in them both, thinks they're both viable options, and we will see over the next couple of weeks who ultimately wins out.
Okay. Before we get into the depth chart, so the coaching staff, again, Leipold, 27-35 so far, year 6. And then we look at the defensive coordinators returning and DK McDonald. But the big addition is Andy Kotelnicki. And so this is interesting because this is to me sort of like what happens in the portal when you have a player that was in the group of 6 and he did really well, and then he goes to the power 4, signs, and it didn't work out. I'm going to go back to the group of 6. That's kind of what I'm seeing with Kotelnicki almost, because we did a Penn State show last year every week. And so I have a pretty firsthand knowledge of how Penn State fans felt about the offense the last couple of years. And they were not happy at all. They very confused at times. Drew Aller never grew as a quarterback. So there was a lot to question there. But now he's back in Kansas. So what was the feeling among Kansas fans to have Kotelnicki back? And why do you think this is going to be a good thing for Kansas?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the Penn State perspective. I remember right after he got hired, like maybe the day it was finalized, I went on a radio show in Altoona or something, and they were like, what should we expect? And, I said all sorts of things, brilliant, creative, offensive mind, puts his players in the best position to succeed. And they were like, I just can't get over the fact that Drew Aller is a really different kind of quarterback from Jalen Daniels or Jason Bean. He's not a running guy. And that turned out to be one of the issues that they had with Kotelnicki. Now, granted, if you went on any Penn State broadcast in 2024, they were raving about him. So they turned on him in a hurry. But yes, from the KU perspective, people are overjoyed. I would say, considering that the team got a lot worse in his absence, people have maybe even developed too idealized an idea of what Kotelnicki was like during his 3 years here. But the proof is in the pudding. KU's offense got worse under Jeff Grimes, although maybe not as much as people suggested. But Grimes had a lot of issues with being sufficiently aggressive at times where it was justified and sufficiently conservative at times where it was justified. Then last year, Grimes goes to Wisconsin. Jim Zebrowski was promoted from quarterbacks coach and co-offensive coordinator, and kind of a mixed bag. A lot of players were inconsistent, and Daniels completely fell off a cliff the second half of the season. So a lot of people are happy to have Kotelnicki back. I understand he's developed kind of a reputation for being gimmicky. The fact is, when you're KU, it's different from Penn State because you're not going to have the highest caliber of athletes. You can't just line up and bowl people over. You got to do wacky motions to get an edge, especially against some of the defenses you'll face in the Big 12. So a lot of fans are really excited about it. Now, there were complaints they had with Kotelnicki towards the end of his time here. They just don't remember. Like in the Texas Tech game in 2023, they weren't happy when he called a halfback pass on 3rd and goal at the 3-yard line.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, they end up losing that game a minute later.
Okay.
But in any case, beyond Kotelnicki, it's really kind of getting the band back together because when KU's offenses were succeeding in 2022 and 2023, Andy Kotelnicki was the offensive coordinator, Jim Zebrowski was the quarterback's coach, and Matt Lubick was an analyst. He was actually working remotely while fighting leukemia, but he was really key in implementing a lot of the option stuff that they became known for using with Daniels. Well, Lubick went away. He was the offensive coordinator in Nevada for a season. He came back as the tight ends coach and co-offensive coordinator. Zebrowski has stayed on even though he got demoted to passing game coordinator, and Kotelnicki's back. So can lightning strike twice? Can they recapture the magic? That's sort of what the deal is with Kotelnicki this year. And it'll be really interesting because it's not a lot of the same personnel from before he left.
That's true, especially at quarterback. So tell me about this battle here. Is this 50-50? Does one of these quarterbacks have the lead?
It's tough to say because it would be speculation, but I think the general consensus in KU world is that Ballard has a slight advantage, which a lot of fans are not happy with because a lot of fans have seen Marshall as kind of Daniel's designated successor. He's a similar player in a lot of ways. He was a highly touted recruit. Ballard is a former walk-on who's the son of the Colts general manager, Chris Ballard. So kind of a different background. the way it's been described to me is Ballard's kind of like a quarterback out of a movie. He's a rah-rah leadership guy. He's really respected by everyone. He has command of a huddle. It's just kind of like Zabrowski has said kind of the biggest area of improvement for him is being looser, being less rigid in his mechanics. But he's got an arm. He can put it down there, and he's a gamer. I mean, as a true freshman third stringer, he had to start the rivalry game against K-State. And while not exceptional, he handled himself well enough that they could have won that game. As for Marshall, for him, it's kind of like he's an incredible athlete. He averaged more than 10 yards per carry in a designated run package last year on 15 attempts. They can probably do a wider range of stuff with him in there as a result. But he doesn't have that same command of the huddle. Zabrowski said he needs to work on his, quote, functional intelligence. Like he has more work to do in terms of processing. And also, if you watch him in practice, his throwing motion's a little wonky. He gets the ball way up there. So we'll see what they ultimately choose. They have been mum so far on the plans. I expect we'll probably find out a starter Monday of game week, if even then, heading into the Long Island game. But yeah, tight competition. The fans want Marshall. Most of us lean a bit toward Ballard as the likelier choice, but it's really hard to say.
Yeah, it kind of sounds that way. You go with someone that maybe a little bit more command of the offense, and especially early on, at least there's that game. At least there's that preseason game to start with. And
I should mention, sorry to interrupt,
it's okay.
Leipold has said expect both of them to play whatever happens, which is weird because he also said it's not that weird, but he also said he doesn't want to do a 2-quarterback system. But he has said expect both of them to play. So
so he's looking at it as a preseason game.
Yeah. But he meant I don't think he was talking specifically even about Long Island. Expect both of them to play throughout. So we'll see.
Okay. All right. So that's quarterback, and that's probably the biggest question on the team. So let's go through it because the backfield is interesting. All 3 portal kids have produced elsewhere. Is this a committee, or is there going to be competition in camp for the number 1 spot, or is there definitely a number 1?
I think it'll be a committee because they do different things. I mean, Justin Willis, 6'1", 230, is a bruiser. He's incredibly physical, and he runs people over. But the thing that's unique about this year's KU backfield, last year it was kind of a timeshare with Daniel Highshot and Leachon Williams. They are very similar players. That was it was not thunder and lightning. It was a thunder and thunder kind of deal they had going there. Dylan Edwards, I mean, anyone who watched that Colorado TCU game in 2023 knows what he's all about. Injuries prevented him from making much of an impact at K-State last year, but he's had some of the brightest flashes of probably any running back on a national scale. So I expect they'll have him catch a lot of passes. I expect they'll put him in motion all over the place. And I think he and Willis will be the top 2 in terms of touches. Edwards has rarely gotten significant amounts of carries in a single game. So I really don't expect him to be this is our feature number 1 back. But he's going to get his hands on the ball a lot, and I think having Willis is a good maybe sort of counterpoint. Dupree's a little bit of he was the leading rusher at Colorado State last year. He's a little bit of an enigma just because he missed the spring due to an offseason surgery, so he's only just working his way back in now. I think that number 3 slot is probably where he ends up. And I think that they like his physicality as well and him as an option. He's also been pushed by Corey Amakri, who's a true freshman from Hazlitt, Michigan, who they're really, really high on. But Amakri hasn't really been practicing at all. He's hurt right now. So they're not super healthy at running back. That said, this may be the best running back room in total that they've had under Leipold, which is saying something because they had their all-time leading rusher in Devin Neal for the first 4 years Leipold was here.
Yeah, that's another one. But that shows you where the program was just a couple of years ago with both Daniels and Neal. Okay, let's talk about the receivers. And Cam Pickett, number 2 receiver from last year, returns. Is he going to be the number 1, or will that be Nick McMillan?
Well, that's interesting because McMillan, I mean, he might be, if you're going to talk about the best transfers that they brought in, he could potentially, it would be between him, Edwards, and Trayvon McAlpine, who's out for the season. Those are probably your top 3 in terms of top transfers because he had a borderline 1,000-yard season. He was all MAC last year at Buffalo. Nick McMillan was. So I don't know exactly who you declare to be the number one. They're both going to get a lot of balls thrown their way. Pickett, it's kind of interesting. He had 6 catches for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half of the first game last year, and then he got hurt. And while he kind of continued to play through the injury, but he wasn't really as effective for a while after that first half of the first game. I'm sure KU's thinking, like, if we can just get a healthy stretch out of Pickett, he can potentially be a real threat. He's very shifty. He's got good hands. I think there's a lot of reason to expect a big breakthrough from him. Najee Cox, or I guess Najee Cox, I think is how you pronounce it. Najee Cox is a big body contested catch guy they got from Middle Tennessee, originally from Fresno. I spent some time in the Central Valley myself, so I talked to him about that a little bit in the spring. But those will be the top 3 guys in all likelihood, although Keaton Kubeka, who's been in the program for a while, is pushing Cox somewhat. The problem is they don't really have a lot of depth. Like, beyond that, your next option is a converted former quarterback in Tate Nagy, who has never had significant action at receiver. Son of Matt Nagy, by the way. They've got a couple of NFL sons on here. But none of those younger receivers have really been tested at all. And by the way, Jaden Nickens isn't even in the program anymore. He left, and he wants to only play basketball now. So no more Nickens. He was supposed to be a 2-sport athlete, but he never appeared in a game for either team. So anyway, I think McMillan, Cox, and Pickett are a great trio with Kubeka supporting, but I think there's question. If anyone gets hurt, it could be trouble.
How many games did Pickett miss games last year?
No, he just played limited snaps. Like, if you look at his snap counts in like the Wagner and Missouri games that came right after, and even West Virginia probably, he was getting like 15, 20 snaps. I mean, he even still got a touchdown, one of them, but it took a while for him to get back up to speed and to be featured as much as he had been in the first half of the first game.
Okay. All right. Are they going to get anything out of the tight end position?
I mean, they should. They got 4 guys. Carson Brune, I think you're right to have him in the top spot, even though he had 5 catches last year. He's a big body out of Sioux Center, Iowa. Kotelnicki recruited him. He has a fun story about going to see him in his high school production of Grease, where his mom was the director. He'll probably be the top choice. He's a good blocker. Need to see more out of him as a pass catcher. I think, they'll use all of them. KU always uses lots of tight ends, and honestly, they haven't been insanely productive. Although Bowden Gruen was a pleasant surprise last year after both Carson Brune and Deshaun Hanukkah got knocked out for the season. But they use a lot of them. Leipold's kind of framed it like we're going to figure out who the top 2 are. To me, I think the top 2 right now would be Brune and Jalen Butler. Okay. Butler's kind of interesting because he played so much for a pretty good Old Dominion team. He's actually a former JUCO basketball player, but they never threw him the ball at Old Dominion. Like, if you look, he had barely any targets. He started every game for them. The tight ends were just not a prominent part of their offense through the air. But he's an athlete. Like I said, a basketball player, 6'4", 250, a lot to like. Apparently, he's had a good start to fall camp. So right now, I'd expect him and Brune to have a tiny edge over Leighton Cure and Carter Moses. On the other hand, Moses is the most proven pass catcher of anyone because he actually has a season as a starter at Albany under his belt. So 4 options. Cure's been in the program a long time, obviously, the brother of Lincoln Cure, who plays over at K-State. So interesting position. I don't expect anyone there to be a star, but Kotelnicki, when he was here the first time, he schemed Mason Fairchild wide open so many times up the seam. I expect you'll see some more wide open touchdowns up the seam for these guys. Just a question of who's catching them. Okay.
Offensive line. It looks like we have 3 transfers potentially starting. Do you think that's the way it's going to go? Will the offensive line be better or not than last year?
Well, let me tell you what. I'm going to give you a spiel that I would have given you prior to yesterday, and then I'm going to give you an addendum based on something that happened yesterday.
Okay.
So going into this season, the idea is you return the left side of your offensive line. With Calvin Clements, he's a local kid from Lawrence Free State High School. Big body at 6'7", 320, I want to say he's listed as. He stands out. He's one of those guys you see him getting off the bus or whatever. Had a very inconsistent first season as the left. 325 they've got him at now. had a very inconsistent first season as a starter. Like so many tackles, he got taken advantage of by David Bailey and Romello Height. Thankfully, he doesn't have to see them this season. But he should be better this year. He's kind of a program leader at this point. Amir Herring snatched that left guard job in camp last year and didn't let it go. And he should also take a step forward. So they feel pretty good about that side. The rest of it's going to be brand new. And that's why I think this could be one of the few position groups that maybe isn't quite as good as last year, even though last year players like Bryce Foster and Kobe Baines maybe underperformed a little bit as compared to what was expected of them. But the way it was shaking out, again, I'll add something at the end, but the way it was shaking out was Kason Carpenter slotting in at center. They got him from Oklahoma State. Nick Morrow, who was a left tackle at Cal, sliding over to start at right tackle. And then a position battle between Texas transfer Connor Stroh and returning UCLA transfer Tavake Tuiko Lavatu at right guard. Now, yesterday, Kason Carpenter didn't practice, and they moved Herring into center and had Tuiko Lavatu and Stroh at each of the guard spots. That could be their best offensive line. Herring's practiced at center before, but he told us he hadn't done it through all of the spring, so it was a bit of a surprise to see him doing that yesterday. But that's just something to keep an eye out for, because they could decide that Herring at center with Stroh and Tuiko Lavatu is better than Herring, Carpenter, and either Stroh or Tuiko Lavatu. So we'll see. Right now, I like how your depth chart looks. I do think Tanner and Solis will be the backup tackles. I think Kopp's the backup center, like you have it. But they're also trying, along with moving Herring into guard, they tried some guys at guard who maybe hadn't spent a lot of time there before. So it's been a couple years where KU has done some late game switching on the offensive line in the late stages of fall camp. Like last year, like I said, Herring wasn't even supposed to contend for the starting job until he got it. And then the year before that, they switched the sides of Logan Brown and Bryce Cabledew at tackle. Both of them end up going to the NFL. So it worked out pretty well. So we will see if this Herring center thing sticks. Broadly speaking, I think the line is okay. I think I'd be surprised if it was up to the level of some of what they've had in earlier years, but we'll see.
All right, that's offense. So let's take a look at the defense. And so how has it been going with DK McDonald?
Well, I don't think the fans were super happy with his first year as a defensive coordinator. Kind of starting with that Cincinnati game that I mentioned, the secondary got torched a lot. And Jalen Todd was a true sophomore starting at outside corner last year. Austin Alexander was a redshirt freshman starting at outside corner last year. They took their lumps, especially Alexander. And some of the other guys, Todd had to slide inside to nickel at one point because they had injuries at nickel. It was their first year using a fifth defensive back. They were more of a 4-3 than a 4-2-5 under Brian Borland. Todd had to slide inside nickel. They had to use other guys on the outside. It didn't go very well. So the hope is this year, added experience does those players some good and does McDonald some good as a coordinator, because that was his first time doing it.
Was he a DB coach?
What do you say?
Wasn't he a DB coach?
Yeah, exactly. And also for the Eagles at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a good look.
Sorry?
That's not a good look.
No. But he's well respected in terms of how he coaches that position. I think he sounds more self-assured this year. I think the players will have a better idea of what they're supposed to be doing. There were a lot of missed assignments last year, and I like that he's added the multiple fronts. Last year, they were trying to fit some square pegs into round holes. They had recruited for a 4-man front, but they were doing these 3- and 5-man looks to mess up opposing offensive lines. Well, this offseason, they probably had a better idea that was what they were going to do, and so they recruited some personnel that works for it a little bit better. So we can get into the individual positions, but I do expect the defense to be a little bit better this year, and if it doesn't, they will definitely crank up the heat on DK, I think.
So you think Todd and Alexander stay on the outside?
Yeah, well, I will say Alexander also missed the spring due to injury and has been limited in the start of fall due to a separate injury. There's opportunities for other players to swoop in and try to take his spot. It's funny because that's what he did last year, DJ Graham. DJ Graham, who was a transfer from Utah State, was going to be the starter, but he dealt with some nerve damage issues in fall camp, and that's kind of how Austin Alexander solidified his own starting spot. Well, this year, he's been limited. So if someone like Roman Pearson, a transfer from Ball State, or Saeed Gibbs, who was there last year, he played at Rhode Island and Georgia Tech, can have a really good stretch of practices, who knows? Maybe they'll be on the outside in the first game. But yeah, Todd and Alexander are the favorites.
Okay.
And one would hope from a KU perspective, they would be better than last year.
Okay. So who then do you think should be the starting nickel?
So last year they came out and it was Mason Ellis, and then he got hurt. And it's unfortunate because he's consistently been one of KU's fastest and strongest players, but just hasn't been healthy. So I think it'll be him competing with Kaijon Cummings-Coleman, the Iowa State transfer. I think Gibbs, who you have there, is also an option because Gibbs was the primary backup to Ellis at nickel last year. So I think they're all in the mix. But, a lot of players, all three of those guys I just mentioned have not been fully healthy this offseason. So they've had some weird guys in there, like Trey Brown, a true freshman, and Brandon Schmelze, a redshirt freshman. But I do think it'll be someone from the grouping of Cummings, Coleman, Ellis, and Gibbs who ultimately starts at nickel. Probably Cummings, Coleman, or Ellis. Ultimately, when all is said is done. We haven't had the chance to talk to Cummings, Coleman yet because he's been hurt and hasn't been made available. So I'll be interested to hear. But I know they think highly of him. I know he was thought highly of at Iowa State. So kind of an interesting position, and I do expect them to run some 3 linebacker looks again this year as well.
Okay. Safeties and Taylor Davis. He's been there for a couple of years. And then you look at the new guy is Corey Gordon, who had put up 53 tackles for Louisville last year and 64 tackles for Baylor over 2 years. Is that your starting safeties?
I think so. I think Harris is pushing Davis, and they'll both play a lot. Jaden Harris started for Miami 2 years ago. I don't think he was super well liked by Miami fans that year, but he started there, and then he transferred to Georgia. He's been in some of the best programs in the country, and by all accounts, he's pushed Taylor Davis a lot. I expect Davis, who's one of the leaders of the defense, to ultimately be the starter, but I think they'll both play a lot. I do think Christian Pritchett is the primary backup to Corey Gordon at strong safety. And I think in both of those players, KU feels it has a sort of length and coverage acumen that it really hasn't had. Last year, they were starting Taylor Davis and Lyric Rawls. Those are both kind of box safeties who are more comfortable in run support. I think they identified that as a weakness and so really prioritized getting experienced coverage guys. Gordon, obviously more experienced than Pritchett, who was a special teamer for Georgia Tech. But I think Corey Gordon is a really logical fit on this year's back end of the defense.
Linebacker and Trey Lathan is back, and he's the number 1 tackler. So he has to be one of the leaders of the defense. And they brought in a bunch of transfers for the other position, it looks like. And maybe the biggest name of the bunch could be Davion Crouch, who comes over from Boston College.
Yep, exactly. Lathan, I think he played a more prominent role last year than anyone expected him to, including himself. And so this offseason, he's really embraced being an off-field leader and kind of the center of that defense. And the defensive communication has to improve to prevent some of those missed assignments from last year, and he's going to be at the center of it. I expect big things from him. He's a surefire team captain. And I do agree with you. I think Crouch will be probably alongside him as a starting weak side linebacker. A guy who was a captain himself at BC. He got injured last year, which interrupted what had been a pretty consistent stretch of seasons for him, albeit for not a very good team. But yeah, I think Lathan and Crouch will be the top 2. I will say Quincy Davis, who wasn't even a starter at New Mexico State, has been one of the surprises of the offseason. They really like him, and they think he can spell Lathan early and often, and maybe even cross-train a little bit at weak side linebacker. So they're high on Davis. Jabril Alameen, he's been undersized. He played at Marshall like 205 last year. So they saw him as someone who could be a little bit of a hybrid, play on the weak side sometimes, and then sometimes serve as the third linebacker, the hawk, they call it, when they put 3 linebackers on the field. I will say Landon Watson has been ruled ineligible, the Kentucky transfer. So
Okay.
he was going for a 6th year based on the 2021 season, I think it was when he was at TCU, but NCAA didn't approve it. So no N and Watson. They do like Malachi Curvey, though, the son of former Iowa State standout Brent Curvey. He's from Waukee, Iowa. And he's, as a redshirt freshman, 6'4", 245 at linebacker and a good athlete. So they're high on him, and I would expect him to get a couple snaps here and there on the weak side as well.
We don't have him on the depth chart?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we got to add him. Again,
yeah, maybe just slide him in for Landon Watson.
Okay.
Right,
and again, what was the name?
Malachi Curvey, Curvey.
Curvey, got it. All right. Let's now talk about the front four. And is this a concern? Is this a question mark?
Mostly no. Mostly,
Okay.
I think this is actually going to be good for a couple reasons. First of all, I think Leroy Harris may be one of the most under-discussed players in the Big 12. He had a really good season last year as a true sophomore. He was not well regarded as a transfer from Chattanooga, despite the fact that he is the son of a former veteran NFL offensive lineman, Leroy Harris Jr., and then he put up some good numbers at Chattanooga. But, KU brought him in thinking he might redshirt. Well, instead, he was the starting weak side defensive end. And he led the team in both sacks and pass deflections. This is a guy who's now up to 272 pounds and runs 21 miles an hour as a 6'5", 270 defensive end. They are really, really high on him. And they need to be, because they need to generate a pass rush somehow. They were very inconsistent in that respect last year. Obviously, Dean Miller last year didn't really do as well as expected, which is part of why Harris had the opportunity. But they like him. Alex Bray was on the team last year at the strong side defensive end. He's a big guy too, also I think 270 or so. And he's more of a run stopper. I expect those to be the two starters. And yeah, Santiago, I think, can play on both sides. Michigan State transfer who was previously at Air Force. And then Dak Brinkley had some real flashes late last year, including a 2-sack game at Arizona. So I'd expect him to show up in pass rush situations. They've mentioned Garrett Martin a couple times as someone who's strung together some good days in fall camp. I like the defensive end spot a lot. It's not the deepest in history, but I think Harris has the potential to have an all-conference season this year.
Okay.
On the inside, Blake Harold, same kind of deal. He's like a lighter sort of defensive tackle, a quieter guy who's had to become more vocal in that room because there were like 3 or 4 guys who were there for basically the entirety of Leipold's tenure who just graduated. So he's been taking a step forward, but they think very highly of him. He's a really good interior pass rusher. And so, when they run 3-man fronts, they can have him on the outside a little bit more. The problem is, as I referenced earlier, Trayvon McAlpine out for the season with an ACL. And he was all conference for Tulane last year. They obviously made the college football playoff. And he was probably going to be like a nose for them when they ran those odd fronts. So that's a big loss. Iman Smalls, though, like it could be worse. You've got a guy who had a good season at UAB last year. 350 they have him listed at now.
50
solid
tackles.
What'd you say?
50 tackles. That's a lot for an interior defender.
Absolutely. I think that really stood out to them when he was in the portal. The only thing is, like, if he's not on the field, maybe there's a little bit more of a question mark in terms of run stopping now, because Marcus Calvin is in Harold's class, but he's always been a little bit more of a project, maybe not quite as ready to take the field. He's got to outperform expectations this year. And then when you think about someone like Jabril Condi from Grand Valley State, he's more in the vein of Harold, like kind of a lighter guy, and he needs more time to develop too. Kevin Otis, I don't know that they're necessarily sure what they'll get out of him yet. He was at Arkansas. He's got a big body, so maybe the loss of McAlpine will open up opportunities for him. I do think there are question marks here, but I do think Harold, Smalls, and Calvin as a trio are a good place to start.
Okay. And how does the secondary look? Are they going to have a true freshman punter?
They are, and a punter who's never played American football before.
Oh, another Aussie.
Exactly, but not from Pro Kick. He's from the Australian Kicking Academy, which is an
Okay.
independent organization that was started by a former pro kick guy. So kind of a different route there. But yeah, they seem to like him, but it's really hard to know anything about him until he takes the field and starts punting.
Yep.
They did get a backup punter, which they did not have before. So they have a walk-on backup punter, Ben Shipley. I do think Gill will be the starter, but they went through the spring with one punter, which is a little inconvenient. So now they have two. Last year was a really good special teams year for them with Finn Lappin punting and Waith Marjan kicking. Marjan now with the Steelers. Martin Connington was 12 of 16 at Michigan State last year. I think they think he can develop over the course of his career. He's already got a proven record of kicking in big games. They like that. But we'll see if he can maybe up his accuracy a little bit. You see Eford on there. He's a walk-on, second-year player originally from Branson. And then long snapper, Reno Monteforte is one of the most interesting guys to talk to. First of all, he's like 5'7" and 210 pounds, so he doesn't look like your average football player. But he's been at Cal and Notre Dame. He wants to be a theology teacher. He's like a very kind of grand and bombastic speaker. Like he's a fun guy to talk to. Quite the character for a long snapper. But he's snapped in big games. He's snapped in college football playoff games. So they like that. It's the first time they've ever gotten a long snapper from the portal. And then in the return game, Tate Nagy as a true freshman was almost flawless as a punt returner. So that was good for them. My only question is how much do they try to integrate Dylan Edwards now, who famously has experience as a returner. My ultimate expectation is that Edwards probably serves as the kick returner with Nagy on punts, but we'll see. I don't know. It's obviously still early, and they kind of figure those things out late. Keep an eye on Corbin Glasgow. Maybe not necessarily for this year, but for the future. He's a true freshman from Denton, Texas, who's really, really fast. And I expect him to get some chances as a returner down the line, too. So
what position does he play?
Receiver.
Okay.
So I don't know if he's maybe a depth chart addition this year, but maybe they'll find some ways to mix him in on special teams. And yeah, I think that I'm very impressed by the true to life nature of this depth chart. It's quite detailed and mostly pretty accurate.
Tucker does a great job. And it is not easy, not at this time of year in the portal. It's a full-time gig, that's for sure. Okay, so let's see where we started. Let's take a look at the win total for Kansas. Is sitting at 5.5 or 6.5. They're minus 156, which is pretty heavy. So it's like they're telling you it's really 6. It's plus 142 if you want to go to 7. So I guess the bottom line is, do you think Kansas is a bowl team? What do you say? Is Kansas a bowl team?
It's so tough. And this is the most optimistic time of year because we've just been hearing all the great things about this team and how fast everyone is now, how much muscle everyone's put on. It's that time of the season. I don't know. I have a hard time picking them to get to 6 wins without seeing proven quarterback play.
Yeah.
I saw what it was like the last 2 years, the beginning of 24 and the end of 25, when Daniels wasn't playing up to his standard, and they struggled. If they're going to need like a mid-level Big 12 quarterback performance to be a bowl team, and I'm not 100% sold yet that these guys can provide it. I may look foolish. Who knows? One of them might be all conference. But right now, I lean toward them being more of a 5-win team and a 6-win team. Okay. We'll see, though, because there are a lot of unknowns. And like I said, I think they're better at running back. I think they're about even at wide receiver. I think they're better at tight end, considering how injured they were at tight end last year. I think they're better at defensive end. I think they're about even at D-tackle. I think they're much better at linebacker. And I think they'll be better at safety and probably about even at corner. That's favorable, but the quarterback thing is like a huge concern for me. So right now, I lean toward them being a bit more of a 5 than a 6-win team.
Do you think, from what you've heard as far as the quarterback situation, like were they struck down by other quarterbacks they were after and this is what they have left? Or have they kind of felt, and you've heard all along, that, hey, these are the guys, they were there last year, we expected them to take over, and one of them was going to be starting this year. This was the plan all along, and we have the confidence that one of these two guys is going to get the job and be just fine.
I think it was that. I think they plan on this. The only way in which they didn't plan on it is that they had another freshman last year, David McComb, who I think really could have been in the mix, but he transferred to Miami of Ohio. And then after that is when they eventually added Chase Jenkins. So I think maybe they thought they'd have 3 options instead of 2, but I don't think they ever seriously pursued a big name portal quarterback. I think they really wanted to give these guys, they've been sitting around for 2 years behind Jalen. I think they really wanted to give them a chance to battle it out for a starting job, and we will see if their patience is rewarded on the field this year.
Well, how often do you get to go to practice?
Oh, we go to most of the fall camp practices. They just give us a 20 to 25 minute window to watch it. So tomorrow morning at 8:40, I'll be back out there. But so we see them pretty often, get to keep tabs on the developments. We just don't see a lot of live periods. It's a lot of stretching and individual drills. But we do get a pretty good, I would say, not that I know what every Big 12 team's practice access is like, but I'd say pretty good in terms of what KU Communications gives us.
So when fans, and we got links in the description of this video to check out social media, kusports.com. So if in the next few weeks, a week before the season begins, if they follow your content, are they going to see you talk one way or another about how the quarterback battle is going? Or are you not going to know that?
Well, I'm going to do my best to provide whatever information.
Well, you're not going to be able to, because there's always so much information too that you're going to be allowed to release.
That's going to happen too, right? That too. But yeah, I'll do my best. It's the biggest storyline of the offseason, whether we like it or not. I've already written several stories about it in fall camp, and I think I'll have several more by the time the month of August is over. So yes, all your quarterback battle and right guard battle coverage you can find on kusports.com.
Okay, excellent, Henry. I appreciate it, and hey, we'll see how the season goes, and especially if it gets off to a good start, which we'd like to see. Then hopefully we'll be able to talk about an upcoming game along the way, especially again if things look promising this season.
I have no idea how it's going to go. I'm very excited to see how it shakes out. Thanks for having me.
You got it, Henry. Great job. Appreciate it. So Henry Greenstein joining us from kusports.com, the Kansas Jayhawks. And that is that. How many teams are in the Big 12? I don't even know how many. I lose count. 16, something like that. So if there were 16 teams in the Big 12, we just completed 15 of 16 interviews. How awesome is that? Where's the conference? Big 12. I'm not going to count it. I'm just trying to get over there. I'm going to bore you with a count. So there you go. So we've interviewed actually, we haven't. I shouldn't say that. Okay, because we're not finished yet. We still have to do Arizona. That's coming up. And just want to make sure we're done with everybody else. The only one we have not yet done is Cincinnati. But we have Arizona coming up. And that is going to be on Friday. So Mike Luke is going to join us. AZ12 Podcast, Arizona Wildcat analyst will let us know what's going on there, because that is a team to keep an eye on to contend in the Big 12. Actually, I didn't even realize I knocked this off. So here you have Kansas at 45-1 as we looked over. There's Arizona at 19. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Once I get through Arizona, matter of fact, I will probably be a good idea. Maybe we'll put out a Big 12 ranking and predictions next week because we'll be done. That'll be the first conference I'll be done with. I know we haven't done Cincinnati yet, but I'm not going to hold off on Cincinnati to make predictions because I'm not high on Cincinnati anyway. So they were one of my sleeper teams last year, and it was going really well up until late in the season. And then they laid an egg late, and then Brendan Sorsby left, et cetera, et cetera. So, even if we're not able to put hopefully we can. Hopefully we can set something up, but I don't anticipate Cincinnati is going to change. I mean, that interview will change my mind regarding who I think will win the Big 12 and what my position will be as far as top sleeper long shot. So we have 3 more to go in the ACC, Florida State, North Carolina, and SMU. And we are in negotiation with SMU right now. Still have to get the other 2. 5 more in the SEC. Just spoke to someone about Texas, which is awesome. So hopefully we'll line someone up there. We have already spoken to someone from Kentucky. We're trying to line that up. But Arkansas and LSU, those are the two that we're still waiting on. And South Carolina, that'll be no problem. We'll do that soon. And then in the Big Ten, we still have to get Washington, USC, and Nebraska. Those are three we have not yet hooked up, but we are talking to Minnesota and Indiana. So those hopefully will be coming soon. Indiana should be a problem. Just trying to figure out logistically how to put that together and with who. But that's great. And especially when we get done with the Big 12 this week, I'm excited to actually go into the weekend and be able to put together my first 2026 rankings for a Power 4 conference or conference in general. I'm excited because the group of 6, we still have a couple weeks to go. Don't forget, Steve Helwick will be here on Thursday for the Sun Belt. And then at the end of the Sun Belt video, we're going to hold them over for additional bonus coverage for the MAC, just predictions, because we did the MAC preview about a month ago, earlier, before Steve wound up coming on board with us this season, full-time or part-time, but I say full-time because he's going to be with us every week. And then it'll be Mountain West and Pac-12 the next Thursday. And so that weekend after that interview, I get to go in and do my group of 6, my own personal group of 6, rankings and previews and all that. That also includes player of the year for the conferences, all sorts of stuff. So all that stuff will come out once I'm done with each one of these conferences. So we'll do it one at a time. And I'm looking forward to that big time. And then it looks like I can't really guess who's going to be next, but ACC's got a shot. They're in the lead. Only have 3 more to go, but I have to talk to SMU, North Carolina, and FSU before I can come up with a final prediction. Not really high on Florida State or North Carolina, but I'm going to give them a fair shot. And SMU, definitely want to hook that one up because they are considered by Vegas as the second favorite in the Big 12, in the ACC, as you can see here. Now, look, I think Kevin Jennings is the reason why SMU is where they're at. And Lashley's done a really good job. Things have gone well with SMU the last few years with Lashley and Jennings and the move up to the ACC. I just can't see the 2 top teams from the ACC getting there because Miami's going to win the ACC this year. All right. So matter of fact, when I do my final predictions for the NFL draft, for the quarterback slot, this is going to be a really fun thing we're going to do on a weekly basis. And we're going to do a rankings for the 27 draft. If every quarterback wants to leave and goes to the draft, how we rate them on a weekly basis. And we'll start off with whatever the prediction is. Like, who do I think will be the number 1 pick out of all those quarterbacks? And so I'm just letting you know right now that I'm really, really high on Darian Mensah as the number 1 guy. And I know that's not the general case, but I don't care. And I know he might not go number 1, and that's not the point. I'm not trying to guess who's going to be the first pick. We all know that'll be Arch Manning if it comes out. What I'm trying to do is guess who I believe will be the best quarterback of the class. And that's why I'm thinking of putting Mensah in number 1. So I've been a big fan since Tulane. And after what happened at Duke last year, just solidified my feelings about him. And now that he's on a team that can win a national championship, I'm fully invested in seeing him take that next step. So I just don't see it being in this conference because to me, the ACC is the 4th out of the 4 Power 4. We all know the SEC and the Big 10 battle, and then the Big 12 and the ACC battle for that 3rd spot. Well, In my opinion, the Big 12 is the third and the ACC is the fourth this year. And I'm just not going to, there's no way am I going to go, all right, Miami and SMU or Miami and Louisville. Not because it's boring, but just because there's so much, there's just not a lot of talent separation from 2 to 10 to my mind in the ACC. It's just why the conference is weak compared to the other conferences. And here you got a Clemson program that had an awful season last season, and they lost a ton of talent. They're fourth. Now maybe Dabo will, go out there and surprise people and, oh, see, you thought I was done. And just when you thought, things were going to go one direction, we surprised you, that sort of season. No, I just don't see it. So I think there's a number of teams that I could go with, including Virginia, Pittsburgh. I still got to do my Virginia Tech interview next week. NC State's got a quarterback. Georgia Tech is a well-coached team. I'm probably not going Georgia Tech, though, because I was a big Georgia Tech guy last year. And I was really let down by Georgia Tech last year. So I'm just not going to be able to do that again. But that doesn't mean that I think they'll be solid. I think they'll be a good team. I just don't think I'll be picking them. I've told you how I felt about Cal. Love the quarterback. So that's especially he helped me make some money last year. And that's always going to be something I'm going to always be grateful for. Interesting that Florida State is now 42-1, because it wasn't long ago that Florida State, weren't they just like up here in this area like a couple days ago? Now you're going to see a lot more movement now that we're in camp. You are going to see this type of movement, but Florida State has dropped. So, because I was actually surprised Florida State was kind of up there with those teams. Like, why? What are they doing up there? They don't deserve to be up there. So that's where they probably should be. The Duke and Wake Forest interviews should be posted any day now. I just recorded those on Sunday, so look out for those. But I'm not going to be picking either of those teams. I'll be doing Syracuse on Tuesday with Virginia Tech. And Stanford is going to be tomorrow. Yeah, we're doing Stanford tomorrow, right? So we got Stanford, we got NFL and college tomorrow. We're going to do Stanford. Ben Parker, publisher of Stanford Rivals on 3, will be my special guest at 4 o'clock, followed at 4:45 by James Yarcho, and we'll talk Tampa Bay Bucks football. So that's tomorrow. And then we've already done Boston College. So the teams that I'm looking at here in the ACC are going to be Cal. I got to talk Virginia Tech to see what I'm going to do there. But Cal and Virginia, Pitt, NC State, and we'll see about Virginia Tech. One of those teams will more than likely be my second ACC championship loser. I just got to decide which one. And I will be coming to a conclusion there really soon. And I'm looking forward to that. Where's North Carolina? Oh, there they are. Okay. They're all the way down here. Yeah, there's a lot of weirdness going on in North Carolina. The general manager and Belichick's son. It's just, you don't get a good vibe right now at North Carolina. But I'm not the type of person that is going to be doing any Bill Belichick bashing. I don't believe in any of that stuff. I think it's just jealousy. There's just no reason for it. I mean, why bash Bill Belichick? For what reason? And look, I'm a Jet fan. So why would I want to stick up for Bill Belichick? But I just don't see any reason for it. The guy will go down as one of the greatest coaches in the sport. And so he decides to go to college. Why isn't that a good thing? Why isn't it you get a Hall of Fame coach that gets to coach kids in college? Why isn't that something to root for? Not necessarily, I'm going to back him to win a national championship or anything like that, but why do we have to bury him? Be happy he loses. That's jealousy. I just don't, that's just ridiculous. So there's a lot of kids there in North Carolina that are trying to best themselves, and they're they're learning under a legend. I mean, you could say what you want. And that's where jealousy comes in. You can point your fingers and all that stuff. But hey, those kids at North Carolina that get to get coached by this guy, they're the ones that are making out. I don't care what the record is. Maybe it takes another year because that offense last year was just bad. But yeah, they're probably not going to surprise anybody this year. But until I speak to someone in North Carolina that is, since it's Belichick, I will give them a chance. I want to hear it out before I make my final decision. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, so that would be the ACC. And then Big 12 is the same thing. Okay, I shouldn't say it's the same thing because I might do BYU and Texas Tech. I've been a BYU guy last year to this year because I really like the quarterback and I really love the running back. And they're well coached. They're I think they're the most well coached program in the Big 12. And what I mean by that is all across the board, not just head coach. And then the question is for me is going to be who is going to be that team that could get in if BYU doesn't get in? Because in my mind, as I've said before, it's not Utah. I sort of feel like Utah the way I would like Louisville and SMU. But it would be Kansas State, Houston, Arizona, Arizona State. Those are the teams that I have to decide on. And we'll find out with Arizona on Friday where I stand. I like Noah Fafita. I like Brennan as a coach, but they've lost some really big players last year from last year's team. So I got to really see how things are going there. I think Kansas State would be better, but it's asking a lot. First-year coach, especially with teams that have proven coaches right there. And that's probably why I won't go with Kansas State. We're most likely going to come down to Houston and Arizona State. But we'll see about Arizona. But probably going to come down to Houston or Arizona State. And then what do I do? Do I take BYU or do I put one of those two teams in there? So that's the Big 12. Big 10, you got three powerhouse teams, so it is a little easier to say, okay, it's going to be two of those, and let's go. And look, I can see that. I really can. I have to do the USC interview. And the Washington interview. That's what's holding me up because both of those. Now, look, I really don't believe that Washington is going to be a Big Ten competitor to win the conference. I just want to see how competitive they're going to be. But USC, the last couple of cycles, they've done a really good job in recruiting. They've got the returning quarterback. This is the most talented team that Lincoln Riley's had. So I really have to dig deep there. I still don't know if I'm going to believe in them because of the travel and the schedule, but we'll see. They're in the running. Michigan's in the running too. They have a championship roster as long as Bryce Underwood takes the next step. He doesn't have to be a superstar. He just has to take the next step and be one of the better Big Ten quarterbacks. And if he can do that, Michigan can win the championship. So I just got to dig a little deeper there with having some contacts and hear what's going on. So I'll do that for sure before making a decision. But I think Michigan definitely is up there. And then as far as the rest, yeah, look at these odds have really changed even since yesterday. These odds have gotten a lot bigger. Look at Illinois. We just did Illinois yesterday. They're up to 140 to 1. I don't know what Wisconsin's doing ahead of Illinois. That's ridiculous. UCLA, they definitely will be better. They could be in the middle pack. Northwestern is going to be more competitive. Let's see. Michigan State will be potentially bowl eligible. And Rutgers is getting absolutely no respect here. And it's interesting because I've heard why. And I think it's ridiculous. There's too many people talking about how bad their defense was last year. Well, that was last year. Have you heard of the portal? So it's just, you don't want to give teams like Rutgers the benefit of the doubt. But, because of what happened last year. They hired a new defensive coordinator who was a heck of a coach at FCS. And they've got they got much better personnel on defense now than last year. And Greg Schiano knows how to coach. And the trick with it, Rutgers, is going to be, like a lot of other teams, what's up with quarterback? Because I think they will have less success and less of a shot if Dillard Lonergan wins the quarterback job. He's got talent, 4-star kid, Alabama. But last year, for the most part, was bad at Boston College. Now, he had some moments, but I'm sorry. It's one thing to say, oh, yeah, it's just Rutgers. It's almost like saying, well, yeah, it's Purdue or Maryland. And I'm sorry, but Rutgers is better than Maryland and better than Purdue. The fact that they're rated behind Maryland is a joke. So it's all up to AJ Serace. He's a homegrown kid, and he's ready. In my mind, he should be the starting quarterback. And if he is, then that's a great sign. And that says that the kid is developing. They've got a potential first-round pick at receiver. They have a fantastic running back, one of the best in the Big Ten. They got basically a first-team receiver and first-team running back on that offense. And they've got a solid offensive line. That's not bad. And so it's all up to the quarterback. And if the quarterback can give them what they got last year under Kalakamanis, and I believe AJ Serace will outplay Kalakamanis by next year, that's the question. Can he do it this year? All he really has to do is repeat Kalakamanis, because they put up a lot of points last year. It was the defense that was so bad. And that's not normally the case at Rutgers. Normally at Rutgers, especially under Schiano, it was always the defense, and the offense would drive you insane. And last year, the offense went crazy. And that offense could be just as good this year. But the defense will not be anywhere as bad as last year. It was historically bad. So that's going to be why Rutgers is going to be a much better team, because they're going to be able to play better defense. And as long as they stay away from injuries, because injuries have really killed them the last few years. A lot of that had to do with not having depth. They have the deepest team they've had under Schiano in his second stint. Still, you have to stay away from injuries when you're Rutgers. You can't afford it. So as long as they stay away from injuries and AJ Serace wins the job and is the real deal, that's a bowl team minimum. And I don't even know what the ridiculous win total is. I think it's like 4.5 or something. But we'll get into all that when we do the Big Ten. So it's going to come down, it looks like here for me, to Michigan and USC. It'll be either one of those two teams that I'm going to have to figure out. Do I like either one of them to play in the Big Ten championship game against either one of those three teams, or am I going to go with 2 out of the 3? And at this point in time, if I had to just stick with those 3 teams at the top, I would probably go with Ohio State, and I'd probably go with Indiana. But I don't know. We got to see about Oregon. I know there's some big players back from last year's team, but they lost some big players. This is another thing. I hear some analysts, and they just so nonchalant about when big programs lose players. It's sort of like what happened to Ohio State the last couple of years. After they won their championship and it came back last year, and they were number 1 with Texas. And it was like, oh, that's all they do anyway. Yeah, they lost all that talent, but it's Ohio State. No, I'm sorry. This is a different era. This is the portal era. You can't do that anymore. You're not going to have second and third string 4-stars. It doesn't work that way anymore. Now some positions you'll have that, but overall, you know what I'm trying to say? It's just you can't just sorry, you can't get with it. And I'm glad they aren't, because that worked for me last year, and I see no reason that's going to change this year from what I'm already hearing. Oregon example. Oh, yeah, Dante Moore, great quarterback, and they got this, that, and the other thing. Okay, great. They do. There's a lot of talent on Oregon. But then it's like, oh, yeah, well, they lost a few things. Oh, yeah, they only lost a few things. They lost some, really good offensive linemen. They lost a generational talent at tight end. They also, by the way, lost your offensive and defensive coordinators, who are both now head coaches somewhere else. That's okay. Okay, right, sure. So that's why I would go Ohio State and Indiana if I had to pick. And I got to be honest with you, I don't know if I'm not going to pick Indiana. I know I've been pretty critical about Indiana because of their non-conference schedule and all that. But besides that, and they are not as good as last year's team, and there's just no doubt about that. But they don't have to be. They could still lose 2 games during the regular season, make the playoffs, and make a run. I just am staying away from Indiana to win a national championship like I would stay away from any team, especially today in this era now, to win back-to-back national championships. I'm sorry, I'm just not doing it. And odds these are just the Big Ten odds, the championship odds. What are they, 9-1 or something like that? But even that's just not good enough. I'm sorry. I mean, you know what? You're going to win in a back-to-back, beat me. Okay, go ahead and do it and repeat and find a way to navigate a second straight national championship, which is extremely hard to do. It was hard to do 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15. Even when you had those dynasties, it wasn't like it was so easy to go back to back to back. There was a lot of maybe back, you'd had a couple of back to backs, but a lot of it too was win like three championships in 6 years or something like that. So there was a lot of winning by these dominant programs, but it was not easy. It was, and the thing is it was so much easier back then because you knew the Alabamas and the Clemsons and those types of programs and the Georgias were all going to be back the next year. And it was going to be, all you had to do was get to a 4-team situation. So you only had to win 2 games. So it was so much easier back then. It is not easy now. Now you got to get through much more parity. Throw in the fact that you have got to get to a playoff system where you've got to win several games. You got to win up to potentially 4 games to win a championship. Not for me. But I still want I still might wind up taking them as the top team in the Big Ten when it's all said and done. It's just up to whether or not I really believe in Ohio State, and I don't know. They not only did they lose all that talent from 2024's team, but now they lost all of that talent from last year's team, and that's a lot. It really is. And here they are again, same spot. And some of that has to do with the fact that the other, like USC, say, or Penn State or Michigan, has not. Maybe they haven't proven themselves yet to put them in that competition like they might have been a few years ago. Because we all know Penn State would have been like that 3rd team behind Michigan and say Ohio State. But we have no idea what's going on at Penn State. None. We don't have any, as much as I like Matt Campbell, we have no idea if the bringing over Big 12 Iowa State players to Penn State and the Big 10 is going to amount to success. And I'm not talking about bowl success. I'm talking about the success that it takes to win a Big 10 title and to be relevant just like they were a couple of years ago. So that's a guessing game. But with Michigan, there is no guessing game. They were the youngest team last year. I think in the Big 10 at least. They were one of the youngest in the FBS, in the Power 4. You bring all of that experience now from last year's youth. You add in a major coaching edge from last year. Major. You get a bump all across the board. Strength and conditioning is up. The talent's up from the portal. Hyder is going to be one of the top freshman running backs in the country. They got two running backs, two elite running backs on that team. They've got more receiving depth than they've had in years. The offensive line is going to be better than last year. They're healthier and more experienced. And the defense, yes, the defense, that's the one thing that they have lost a lot of talent the last couple of years. No doubt about that. But they get these transfers in from Utah, and there's still some real good players on that Michigan defense. And so that's why I said it's all up to Underwood. If Underwood just is a little bit better than he was last year and he takes a little bit step forward, well, you're not winning a national championship that way. All you're doing is putting yourself in position to maybe squeak into the playoffs. But if he can go out and look, I really believe he will, because he's got the coaching now. And he is a hard working kid. And you got the talent that he has, and you work hard at it. And now you got the coaching. I mean, there's nothing holding the kid back. The question is can he do it this season, or will it have to wait until 2027? And maybe that's what it has to wait to. Maybe that's the year that they put it all together. And maybe they're even a favorite in 2027. So USC, Michigan, one of those two teams. I might slip into the Big Ten championship game and more, but we'll see. We'll talk more about that in a few weeks when we make the final decision there. And then in the SEC, I've already said Texas. I really like Texas this year. Again, I didn't fall for them last year, but they got the goods this year. So they're going to be really, really good. Do not believe in Georgia as a heavy favorite. No way. If they were like 6-1, 8-1, I'd say, okay, I'd consider Georgia, but no way am I considering Georgia at nearly 2-1 to win this conference. No. That's another program that has lost a lot of talent in the last few years. And they have not yet in the last few years proven that they can be with the big boys again in this situation. They're being lined up like they are. And I'm not saying they've lost it. All I'm saying is that they're now kind of just another team. There's just another team that has a shot. And at 260, no, not interested in just another team at 60. We'll talk LSU hopefully soon. I don't think I'm going to pick LSU as a national championship team, only because of the fact that even though we know how much talent they have and Kiffin can coach and so forth, I can't trust Sam Levitt to stay healthy. I just can't do it. And so I just couldn't sit here and say, okay, put your money on LSU to win the championship when Sam Levitt can get hurt at any play at any moment all season long. I hope he doesn't get hurt. I hate injuries for kids. I really do. But that's a risk. That is a big risk. And it's not like, hey, as long as he's healthy. Oh, if he's healthy, they win a championship. It's not that. So first of all, you got to stay healthy. Then you still have to win it. You still got to do everything else, that comes along with being a first-time coach and all the other things going on at LSU. Because remember, things were pretty bad last year for him. They were a mess. So there's some changing that has to go on here pretty quickly, and you've got a lot of other teams to compete with, especially the team that who I love as my number one sleeper in all of college football, and that is Ole Miss. So Ole Miss is sitting there still at 11-1 in the SEC. They were 30-1 a couple of days ago to win it all. So right now I'm probably going Ole Miss in Texas, but I also like Oklahoma as a contender. And then we'll do our South Carolina interview because I'm still holding out for them as a potential sleeper. But I definitely have Auburn as a potential sleeper. And I might have either Kentucky or Vanderbilt as potential long shot teams. But we'll see. That you put a 5-star freshman, true freshman, best recruit in the country on any team that has talent, and you've got to take notice. And I believe Vanderbilt is being overlooked at 100-1 with that sort of situation they got going on there. I think Stein's going to do a good job at Kentucky. I just don't know how much he'll impact them this year. Hopefully we'll line up that interview in the next week or two. And that's the SEC. All right. So there you go. Let's do some some house cleaning. Where are we? Let's get where should we go here? Because there are a few things going on. So again, as we said at the beginning, Kyler Murray is the starting quarterback at Minnesota. We're going to be doing the Minnesota season preview interview with Adam Patrick coming up. And that is going to be on Wednesday, back-to-back Wednesday, and Minnesota and the Cowboys that day. But this is not a surprise. We all knew this was coming pretty much from the day he was signed to be the quarterback. So none of this is surprising. So he is the man now at Minnesota, and he's going to be a very interesting fantasy pickup. So we'll do a fantasy segment for sure before the season begins. This is a big blow to the Detroit Lions. I've already now we're going to be doing division previews as well. I'll be doing that real soon. Might even finish those up before some of the college conferences, even though the season is a little bit later, because I already have all of my information on the NFL teams. Again, we're just going to finish up with the Rams, but I mean, come on. They're the favorite, overwhelming to win it. So I don't know how my mind will be made up one way or another after the interview. So I'm going to be, but at this point, this is what you wait for. You want to wait for a couple of weeks in. I really like to wait until after that second week now. The third preseason now is pretty much that warm-up where you're not going to see a whole lot of starters in. So once you get through that second week, you should be pretty good when it comes to knowing what your team is going to be like. Now, there are still going to be some pickups. There's still going to be some players that get signed after the second preseason game before the start of the regular season, because you have 3 weeks there. And so remember, you got that week off in between instead of that extra preseason game. So there's going to be movement. And just because you don't get injured in preseason games doesn't mean you can't get hurt in practice. What do you think is going on right now? All these guys are getting hurt in practice. And here's a big one. And when we talked about when we did our NFC North early preview a month or so ago, I thought Detroit could have gone anywhere from first to fourth. And I actually had them at, where did I have them? I think I had Chicago first, Green Bay second, and I don't remember if I had Detroit third or fourth. And I think look, anybody that makes predictions in that division could go 1 through 4 in a variety of ways. It is not a major insult to have Detroit picked fourth in the NFC North. It's just not, because they could be fourth in the NFC North and still be 9-8. So that's going to be a really good division. But these are the things that can kill a team, because this is what we talk about all the time in these really tough, competitive divisions. Which are the teams that are going to have the injury luck and which are the teams that won't? And then you other going to deal with other variables as the season goes on, whether it's schedule luck, positive, negative. But this is the number one thing. And right now, this is a bad sign for Detroit, because the offensive line is still a question mark there, especially on the interior. And this is a big blow. So he is going to be out for some significant time, as you see there. Also injured, Luther Burden. And Burden is a fantasy darling. There's a lot of people who believe that Luther Burden is going to break out in 2026 and is going to be a star for the Bears. DJ Moore's gone. It moved Burden into that number one role. And so this is a blow now because Burden, as long as he doesn't have a setback, I mean, he's not going to be able to practice much at all. He's just going to have to hopefully just get in a few days of practice before week one, and there you go. That doesn't mean that he's going to miss any regular season time, and it doesn't mean that he's not going to have a big season. It's just a little bit of a cautionary note that since he hasn't done it before, and he's going to be missing basically a month of getting into more chemistry and just building more of a rapport as being the man for Caleb Williams, that is definitely going to hurt his chances of in that situation. Also, a few others. I don't think we have it on I could probably find it here, but it's not necessary really. Let me see if I can get to the homepage anyway. Let me see if anything happened in the last couple of hours since we've been on here. No, it doesn't look like it. Okay. So as far as some of the news, one of the things that I noticed, actually there were a couple more injuries, and one of them was to Kobe Bryant right here. This is really bad news. So see, the Bears now have to be dealing with Luther Burden out until week one. And now they got to deal with Kobe Bryant missing 4 to 6 months. This is a big blow to their defense. Remember, the defense was the big issue for the Bears last year. What did I do with okay, I got rid of that. Let me put it up here. Let me get that Bears depth chart. Oh, I hate when this does this on my second monitor. I got to do it this way. So line up the Bears depth chart, and you can see the defense, which was their issue last year. So now they had injuries to the secondary, and now all of a sudden you still look at all these players in red. Turner, edge rusher. Bryant now, Kyler Gordon still in red. Thieneman, you're talking about a rookie, as good as he might be, still a rookie. But this was going to be a much improved secondary. You were going to have Gordon, Johnson, and Stevenson healthy for the first time. And then you were going to have a secondary with Kobe Bryant coming over from the defending NFL champs and your first-round draft pick, Thieneman. That was going to be a much improved, maybe the most improved secondary in the NFL with everybody healthy. And now there's questions again. But Devin Bush was signed, and that's still big. There's still, Montez Sweat. And again, though, Turner, we're going to see what happens there because the edge rush is still a question for the Bears. I mean, they're relying on, just players that just haven't, been in that role as being, a big time. We just talked about the Giants. They got potentially 3 guys. And here you got 1. That's all you got. You don't have a second guy. But look, maybe you get Bryant back late in the season and no more injuries. Okay. So I'm not trying to sit here and say that, all right, that's it. The Bears are done. It's just that these are the little things when you are such a tough division. Now you've got a couple of injuries with the Bears. You got a couple of things going on with the Lions. Is anything going to happen to Josh Jacobs off the field? I guess not. I'm not hearing anything about it. Maybe that'll be for next year, which will be good for the Packers. And remember, they had the very uneventful offseason, but, and then look, Micah Parsons won't be around. He won't be around for about 6 weeks, 7 weeks. That's huge. So how does that affect them in the race early if they don't get off to a hot start? And then what does that leave? Minnesota. So this is why, again, even Minnesota, maybe they end up as the one team in the division with the least amount of offseason issues and questions, and they just pop out of the gate, get off to a good start. And that's really all you have to do is you get off to that good start. When you have good coaching, good personnel, if you can stay away from the injuries they had last year, especially up front in the offensive line, and you bring in, a quarterback that can just uplift the offense like Kyler Murray can. Yes, Minnesota, if they can get off to a lead and get the confidence back in that locker room from what happened the year prior, then they could win that division. And that puts the pressure on everybody else. Because if you don't win the division and you're dealing with San Francisco and Seattle and the Rams, so you're dealing with two teams there that won't win the division, now you've got a race now to determine who is going to end up with that final playoff spot or two. So these injuries definitely matter, but at least, nobody's out for the year. And that includes Tunsil at Washington, another situation where he's going to be out a while, but at least he is scheduled to be available later in the season, hopefully. And I think there was just one more. Who was it? Was there one more? Oh, there was a couple more. You got Cam Jordan and Nate Wiggins. So Nate Wiggins, now I haven't heard exactly how long this could be, but Wiggins is going to miss some time. Yeah, here it is. He was carted off. Well, I shouldn't say he's going to miss some time, but when you cart it off, that's not a good sign. Let's see. I have not read this. Okay, the Ravens are hoping for the best. Let's see. He was carted off the field. He couldn't put his weight on his left leg. Got tangled. Wide receiver Jacoby Lane, who's having a really good offseason, by the way. A really good rookie offseason. He's like one of the offseason stars right now. And Jesse Minter said there's optimism that Wiggins avoided major injury. So there you go. We got to see what happens with Wiggins. That's going to be important for the Baltimore Ravens because they cannot afford injuries to young players when they've got older players that they're worried about that can miss time at any moment based on just like these guys like Cam Jordan. And when you get older and you're relying, it's not if you're trying to win a championship, especially nowadays, you can't have like 4 or 5 or 6 guys over 30 that might have been banged up the last couple of years. That's just not a remedy for success anymore. Now you got the extra game even. It's just too much. There's too much competition, but what you could and maybe should have, every team should have, sprinkle in a couple of those guys. But I think Baltimore has just a little too much of those. And they got a little too much of guys that are getting a little bit older and a little bit banged up. And they just can't afford for a younger guy to have that to have that sort of an injury situation. So, and then you got Cam Jordan, and it looks like he's going to miss a little bit of time because of the hamstring injury. And New Orleans is already missing Brzee. And aren't they missing another guy? I think there was another guy on their team that was banged up too. But these are all the types of injuries that come down on a daily basis. And I just hope I can handle it when it comes down from my team. I just got to keep my fingers and toes and everything else crossed that we can avoid injury. Okay, that is going to wrap it up. So thanks once again to Dave Syvertsen talking about the New York Giants, Giants Insider, Ourlads lead scout here, along with John Cooper, and good talk about the Giants. And then we also had our first interview with Henry Greenstein, and Henry coming over from KUSports.com to talk about the Kansas Jayhawks and the Big 12. Tomorrow, again, we're doing a NFL and college football back-to-back like today. We'll be doing Stanford at 4 o'clock, Tampa Bay at 4:45, Then that's it for the NFL. We wrap up the week in college football with the Sun Belt preview with Steve Helwick on Thursday and Arizona Wildcats talk on Friday. So thanks for tuning in. Again, what really helps us here is to share the videos, like the videos, even if you don't subscribe, all that, anything, just, hey, pick an option, and we really appreciate it. All that helps us to grow as a channel. And the more that we grow as a channel, the more content we can give you and the more ways that we can provide you with the very best information and interviews with, people like Henry and Dave. And, they're dialed in on one team, 365. And to be able to get, what have we had so far? Really, seriously, if you combine NFL and Power 4 alone, since the draft, we've had about 10, 20, 30, 40. We've had close to 100 interviews. And you can't beat that over May, June, July, August, not even 4 months. So thanks for being a part of this. Really appreciate it. We'll see everybody again tomorrow right here on the Ourlads Football Network.